Chapter 215. If it were any other business, even with Zhang Meng in charge, there was no guarantee that they would make money if they relied on normal operations. What's more, Zhang Meng wouldn't stay here for the rest of his life. Even if he saved some money in the business industry, if his luck wasn't good and his foresight wasn't good, it would be easy for him to lose his capital. This was the problem that Zhang Meng was worried about. If he stayed in Twin Bull Mountain, all these problems would not be a problem. However, if he left and the business was still running well, after he left, the people in Twin Bull Mountain would lose all his capital. When that happened, Twin Bull Mountain would return to its former state. Zhang Meng had thought about it in detail. No matter what business they wanted to run, there would be a lot of competition. Only in the auction house industry, the competition was much smaller. To build a large auction house would require countless gold coins. Moreover, if Zhang Meng wanted to build a large auction house full of secret mechanisms, the amount of money he would need to spend would be astronomical. The key was that Zhang Meng did not have that many gold coins at the moment, and he did not want to engage in crooked activities. Therefore, this was the biggest problem. Sun Xinjing looked at Zhang Meng's hesitation and said with a smile, "Actually, we don't need to build a large auction house like you said. We only need to build a tight secret room to ensure the safety of the treasures when they are stored. As for when the treasures are taken out, I think..." At this point, Sun Xinjing paused and looked at Zhang Meng before continuing, "I think your family should be able to send some experts. As long as you have these experts, you should be able to ensure the safety of the treasures. By doing this, you can save a lot of money. When you have the money in the future, it won't be too late to build it slowly." After hearing Sun Xinjing's words, Zhang Meng was stunned. Then, he smiled bitterly and shook his head. He knew that Sun Xinjing must have misunderstood and thought that he was a disciple of some big family. He might even think that his family was filled with experts and could casually send out a few experts to protect the safety of those treasures. If that were true, then it would be fine. Unfortunately, it was all just his imagination. However, Sun Xinjing's words made Zhang Meng's heart skip a beat. It suddenly occurred to him that he could solve all of these problems. With him overseeing Twin Bull Mountain, even if there were no mechanisms or secret passages, no one would be able to steal the treasures from under his nose. At this thought, Zhang Meng suddenly had an idea. If it was as Sun Xinjing had said, it would definitely be a good idea. First, he would build a simple auction hall. He would not build any other buildings. As long as there was a place to auction the treasures, everything would be solved. Thinking of this, Zhang Meng was instantly overjoyed. He said, "Branch leader's son, I won't hide it from you. I really don't have that many gold coins right now. How about this? Let's build the auction hall first and the other buildings. After we earn some money, we can slowly build them. What do you think?" After hearing Zhang Meng's words, Sun Xinjing almost jumped out of his chair. Zhang Meng's words were too shocking. In the beginning, he said that he would build the world's largest auction hall. But in the blink of an eye, it became like this. Only build one auction hall? That was a little too ridiculous. Sun Xinjing took a deep breath and calmed his chaotic emotions. He slowly asked, "Prince Zhang, are we only going to build one auction hall?" Zhang Meng nodded. "Only one auction hall. As for the other places, we'll talk about them in the future." After Sun Xinjing heard the affirmative answer, he was stunned again. He couldn't believe his ears. He had already said that the most important thing about the auction hall was its safety. And the most important place was the auction hall's warehouse, which was where the treasures were stored. Could it be that they were only going to build one auction hall and not even a warehouse? Then, where would the treasures be stored? Would they just be displayed on the streets? Thinking of this, Sun Xinjing tried to remind him, "Prince Zhang, are you really only going to build one auction hall and not even a warehouse?" After hearing Sun Xinjing's question, Zhang Meng nodded and replied embarrassedly, "Branch leader's son, I won't hide it from you. I only have 10,000 gold coins. If I use it sparingly, I think building an auction hall shouldn't be a problem." This time, Sun Xinjing couldn't sit still anymore. He stood up abruptly and stared at Zhang Meng. After a while, he realized that he had lost his composure and sat back down. Although he had returned to his seat, Sun Xinjing's heart couldn't calm down. At the beginning, He had said it in an imposing manner, as if he had countless gold coins. But in the end, he only had 10,000 gold coins. This young man actually wanted to use 10,000 gold coins to open an auction hall. No matter how Sun Xinjing thought about it, he couldn't think of a way to use 10,000 gold coins to open an auction hall. To put it bluntly, these 10,000 gold coins weren't even enough to hire people from the Tianji sect. Needless to say, even if Zhang Meng used 10,000 gold coins to build an auction hall, this was still using it sparingly. It was a very small auction hall without any decorations. It was just a big room. However, if you spent all these 10,000 gold coins, wouldn't you stock up on goods? Or rather, if you didn't have a warehouse to begin with, wouldn't you hire experts? If you wanted to stock up on goods, even if you knew that this treasure would bring in a lot of profit, if you didn't have the money to stock up on goods, everything would be in vain. Even if you had a treasure, you didn't even have a well-guarded warehouse. Where would you put the treasure, and how would you ensure its safety? Wouldn't that mean that even if you had a treasure, you couldn't guarantee its safety? Thinking of this, a beautiful scene suddenly appeared in Sun Xinjing's mind. In an ordinary big room, the floor was filled with treasures. The auction guests were all sitting on small stools, waiting for the treasures to be auctioned off. The table used by the auctioneer was the usual dining table at home. The auctioneer was just an ordinary person. Thinking of this, Sun Xinjing couldn't help but shiver. Could this also be called an auction hall? Sun Xinjing raised his head and looked at Zhang Meng, who was not far away, and asked again, "Prince Zhang, these 10,000 gold coins are your pocket money for this month. If you don't have enough gold coins, I think it's better for you to tell your family. Otherwise, these 10,000 gold coins can't be used for anything, not to mention building an auction hall." After hearing Sun Xinjing's question, Zhang Meng shook his head and smiled apologetically. "This is all I have." Chapter 216. After Sun Xinjing heard Zhang Meng's words, he was stunned at first. Then he smiled and said, "Prince Zhang, I know you want to rely on your own strength to complete your business, but you have to know that sometimes it's not a bad choice to ask for help from your family." After Zhang Meng heard Sun Xinjing's words, he was also stunned, but he quickly understood. Sun Xinjing thought that he was from a large family, and at this critical moment, asking for help from his family should be the best choice. However, the large family that Sun Xinjing mentioned did not exist. If there is such a large family, why would Zhang Meng bother to build an auction house here? He would have gone to God knows where long ago. Thinking of this, Zhang Meng hurriedly waved his hand. "Branch leader's son, you've misunderstood. I'm not from a large family. If I want to build this auction house, no one can help me." After hearing Zhang Meng's answer, Sun Xinjing was stunned. After a while, he asked tentatively, "Prince Zhang, you can't be thinking of building an auction house with these 10,000 gold coins, right?" Zhang Meng nodded. "That's true. I only have 10,000 gold coins now." After hearing Zhang Meng's answer, Sun Xinjing's gaze froze. He carefully looked at Zhang Meng again and felt that there was nothing special about this person in front of him. Why would he have such an idea? Seeing that Sun Xinjing was only looking at him without saying anything, Zhang Meng smiled. "Branch leader's son, although I don't have much money now, believe me, I will have more money very soon." After saying this, Zhang Meng paused for a while, then said apologetically, "I know that it will cost a lot of gold coins to hire your people to build an auction house for me. Can we discuss this? I'll owe you first, and when I have the money, I'll pay you double." Hearing Zhang Meng's words, Sun Xinjing was truly shocked. In the beginning, he spoke so arrogantly, but in the end, he actually wanted to buy on credit. By now, Sun Xinjing had somewhat understood that this person was clearly mentally unstable. If they listened to him, who knew what kind of trouble they would cause? No matter how knowledgeable Sun Xinjing was, he had never seen someone who wanted to build the world's largest auction house with only 10,000 gold coins. Most importantly, this person didn't even have the money to hire someone to help him see the auction house. Even if Sun Xinjing was indifferent to fame and fortune, if he didn't even want to pay, how could he build an auction house for him? Don't the people of the Tianji sect need to eat? Don't they need to buy clothes? Thinking of this, Sun Xinjing decided to pour cold water on Zhang Meng. so that this abnormal fellow would wake up and quickly go home. Sun Xinjing looked at Zhang Meng again and said with a smile, "Prince Zhang, I know how you feel, and I know that you want to make a name for yourself. But sometimes you have to face reality. To put it bluntly, your 10,000 gold coins aren't even enough to build a slightly better house, not to mention an auction house." At this point, Sun Xinjing paused for a while, and then said seriously, "Prince Zhang, do you understand what I mean?" Zhang Meng heard this and hurriedly nodded. "I understand branch leader Sun's good intentions, but I have confidence that I can do this well." After hearing Zhang Meng's words, Sun Xinjing was stunned and looked at Zhang Meng doubtfully. He didn't understand if Zhang Meng understood what he said just now. However, how could Zhang Meng not understand the meaning behind Sun Xinjing's words? He wanted to say that since you don't have money, you should stop for a while. However, Zhang Meng wasn't someone who would give up easily. Moreover, although Zhang Meng didn't have money now, was he someone who lacked money? To put it bluntly, if Zhang Meng wanted money, he could get it with a wave of his hand. However, that was meaningless. Since he had such high skills, if he still did that kind of thing, he would be letting himself down as a transmigrator. Zhang Meng had read a lot of novels, but he had never seen a main character who earned a lot of money by stealing and robbing. Everyone relied on their abilities to make a living. If they did that kind of thing, wouldn't it prove that they didn't have the ability? Therefore, the proper industry was Zhang Meng's choice. Seeing that Sun Xinjing didn't believe him, Zhang Meng wasn't unhappy. After all, Sun Xinjing was already a good person. If he were someone who prioritized benefits, after listening to his words, he would have probably chased him out of the South County branch long ago. Why would he be here to patiently explain and tell him about the difficulties of this school? Seeing that Zhang Meng didn't give up on this idea, Sun Xinjing wanted to ignore this matter. However, when he looked at Zhang Meng's young face, he sighed and said, "Prince Zhang, if you use these 10,000 gold coins to build the auction hall, then what will happen to your supply? Don't forget, the supply is where you spend a lot of money. Even if your auction hall is built, if you don't have the supply, what can you sell? Since there's nothing to auction, what's the point of this auction hall?" After Zhang Meng heard Sun Xinjing's question, he quickly waved his hand. "Division Leader Sun, the matter of the supply is a small matter to me. I don't need to spend money." Sun Xinjing was stunned again when he heard Zhang Meng's words. He asked curiously, "Prince Zhang, why don't you need to spend money? Could it be that someone provides you with the supply for free?" After Zhang Meng heard Sun Xinjing's words, he was about to deny it, but then he nodded. "Yes, someone does provide me with the supply for free." Sun Xinjing smiled when he heard this. "Prince Zhang, it seems that you still don't understand these things. If it's a free supply, it definitely won't be anything good." At this point, Sun Xinjing's tone was right. He thought about what to say next, organized his thoughts, and continued. "I've said it just now. The most important issue for an auction house is safety. Another important issue is the supply. If your auction house only auctions some ordinary goods, then think about it. Who will buy from your auction house? Although you don't need to spend much money, in the long run, your auction house won't last long. No one will go there. It's also because of this reason that all the auction houses are willing to spend a lot of money, or even lose money, just to get in touch with some real treasures to increase their auction house's reputation and attract more people to come here to buy things. Therefore, if you want to save money on the supply, it's absolutely impossible. Doing so will only cause your auction house's reputation to decrease until it can't continue operating." After listening to Sun Xinjing's words, Zhang Meng deeply agreed. The most important thing for an auction house was, of course, the auction items. The auction items directly affected the future development of the auction house. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that. Chapter 217. Sun Xinjing's opinion was absolutely reasonable. However, would these problems pose a problem for Zhang Meng? Impossible. The reason why Zhang Meng wanted to open an auction house was because he had the confidence in this aspect. Good things naturally wouldn't trouble Zhang Meng. As long as he wanted it, he could get any good thing in this world. However, Sun Xinjing kindly reminded him, so Zhang Meng definitely wouldn't rashly contradict him. Zhang Ming thought about it and said seriously, "Branch leader's son, thank you for your kindness. I can guarantee that the things auctioned in my auction house are definitely the best things." Speaking of this, Zhang Ming's eyes showed a strong sense of confidence. "I think that the supply of goods is definitely not a problem for me. Branch leader's son can rest assured on this point." The confidence in Zhang Ming's eyes made Sun Xinjing even more suspicious. Was this person's mental state normal? Sun Xinjing had seen many strong people, but no one dared to say such big words. However, Sun Xinjing wasn't someone who liked to argue with others. Since Zhang Ming said that he had good things to auction, then he would take it that he had good things to auction. On this issue, there was nothing much to say. Sun Xinjing thought about it and continued. Since Prince Zhang is confident about the supply of goods, then what about the safety issue? As I said just now, the safety issue of an auction house is also quite important. If there is no safety guarantee, no matter how many treasures you have, it will be useless. They will all be snatched away. After listening to Sun Xinjing's words, Zhang Ming didn't even hesitate and said with a smile, "Branch leader's son, this is even more of a problem. I can guarantee that nothing will be lost in my auction house." Oh, seeing that Zhang Ming was so confident about the safety issue, Sun Xinjing was really surprised. Safety was always the biggest problem for an auction house. Many large auction houses, in order to ensure the safety of their auction houses, spend a large amount of money to hire people from the Heaven's Secret sect to build secret rooms for them to ensure the safety of their treasures. Even so, there were still some treasures that could cause accidents. However, the young man in front of him actually spoke with such confidence. This was really strange. Don't forget, this person had just said that his funds were only enough to build an auction hall. This meant that his auction house didn't have a warehouse, which was the kind of tightly guarded secret room. Without a secret room to protect the treasure, where did this person get the confidence to guarantee the safety of the treasure? A big family. This thought popped up in Sun Xinjing's mind again. Could it be that this person didn't tell him the truth just now? Was he actually someone from a big family? Only this could explain why he was so confident. Even a mild-tempered Sun Xinjing was a little angry when he recalled how Zhang Ming had said that he wasn't from a big family. He had kindly explained it to him, but he actually dared to lie to him. Thinking of this, Sun Xinjing asked somewhat unhappily, "Prince Zhang, since you've already thought of it, I have nothing more to say." When Zhang Ming heard this, he hurriedly cupped his fists towards Sun Xinjing. "In that case, can branch leader's son send Yi Xian to supervise the construction of the auction house for me?" Yi Xian? Hearing this name, Sun Xinjing's mood became even worse. The matter of losing the blueprint had already left him in a terrible fix. Until now, there was still no trace of it. Most importantly, this blueprint was too precious. It could be said that nothing could compare to the value of this blueprint. Hearing Zhang Ming's question, Sun Xinjing couldn't help but sigh. Then, he slowly said, "Prince Zhang, I'm afraid that won't do. Yi Xian has something to do, so I'm afraid he won't be able to build the auction house for you. Why don't we send someone else? What do you think?" When Zhang Ming heard Sun Xinjing's words, he shook his head indifferently. "Branch leader's son, anyone can do it, but there's only one condition. I want the person with the highest skills in the South County branch to go." Speaking up to this point, Zhang Ming's tone paused for a moment before he sternly said, "Branch leader's son, I've already said that although I've only built an auction hall, I can guarantee that I'll be building more buildings very soon. Therefore, I need someone who can coordinate the overall situation and build a huge secret room for the entire auction house. I'm sure Division Leader's son understands the difficulty of this. If someone who isn't skilled enough is unable to connect the entire auction house together, then it would lose its meaning. Therefore, no matter who builds the auction house for me, I won't object. However, Branch Leader's son must think carefully about who is the most suitable candidate. Otherwise, after building the auction hall, if you build other things, they won't be connected. Then, you'll have to tear them down and rebuild them. This is too troublesome." After hearing Zhang Ming's words, Sun Xinjing hesitated. Although he didn't believe Zhang Ming's words, what if Zhang Ming was lucky and he really opened the auction house. If the person he sent first didn't have good skills and built the auction hall first, then when Zhang Meng wanted to build other buildings in the future, he wouldn't be able to connect them. Although Zhang Meng's chances of success were very small, it would be terrible if that happened. At that time, if this person's auction hall really needed to be torn down and rebuilt to connect all the buildings, then the Tianji sect would lose a lot of face. Although the chances of this happening were very small, Sun Xinjing didn't want it to happen. If it was in the past, Sun Xinjing wouldn't even hesitate to send Yi Xian to build the auction house for this person. However, now that such a big problem had happened, he couldn't send Yi Xian. But who should he send? LV Wenkong couldn't go. Even if Tang Jianan wanted to go, Sun Xinjing couldn't let him go. Zhang Leji was still suspicious, so he naturally couldn't let him leave the South County branch. What if the blueprint was in his hands and he took the opportunity to take it out? What should he do then? Bai Jianmu was also Sun Xinjing's suspect. Although he didn't say it out loud, Bai Jianmu was very likely the person who stole the blueprint. Sun Xinjing naturally couldn't send such a person. Who else was next? Lu Huarong, Mei Guangji, and Li Shuyan. These three couldn't do it. They didn't have enough experience and weren't skilled enough. Even if they went, they probably wouldn't be able to complete the mission. Thinking of this, Sun Xinjing felt a little sad. He had 8 disciples, but up until now, he couldn't even send one of them. Seeing Sun Xinjing hesitate, Zhang Qiuming, who had been silent all this time, suddenly spoke. Division Leader Sun, if we want to wait for Yi Xian to build the auction house for us, how long will we have to wait? Sun Xinjing shook his head after hearing Zhang Qiuming's question. Then he turned to look at Zhang Qiuming and slowly spoke. To be honest, our sect has lost an item, and Yi Xian is related to this lost item. Chapter 218. In fact, Zhang Meng and Zhang Qiuming had already heard about what Sun Xinjing said from the disciples at the entrance of the South County branch. However, since Sun Xinjing didn't mention it, the two of them naturally couldn't say anything. At this moment, since Sun Xinjing had already mentioned it, Zhang Qiuming quickly asked, Division Leader Sun, have you found the lost item? Sun Xinjing shook his head when he heard this. I haven't found it. As soon as Sun Xinjing said this, there was a series of footsteps around them. Then, a series of discussions could be heard. When the three of them heard this, they quickly turned their heads and saw LV Wenkong and Tang Jianan walking over. After LV Wenkong and Tang Jianan arrived in front of Sun Xinjing, they first cupped their fists and bowed. LV Wenkong said, Master, we didn't find anything. After Sun Xinjing heard their words, he first nodded and then waved his hand at the two of them. You guys sit down and rest first. Let's see how the rest of the investigation is going. Just as LV Wenkong and Tang Jianan were about to find a seat to sit down, they heard a series of chaotic footsteps and a cry of surprise coming from upstairs. Master, I found it. When Sun Xinjing heard this shout, he was immediately overjoyed. He suddenly stood up and looked at the second floor. The person who shouted on the second floor was Bai Jianmu. At this moment, Bai Jianmu was holding a box and quickly walking down the stairs. When he came close, Bai Jianmu didn't care about bowing. He first handed the box in his hand to Sun Xinjing with both hands. Seeing this box, Sun Xinjing's eyes suddenly widened. He quickly took the box from Bai Jianmu and asked, Where did you find it? After hearing Sun Xinjing's question, Bai Jianmu cupped his hands and replied, Master, I found it in third senior brother's bedroom. Sun Xinjing's eyes narrowed and his face turned ashen. He looked around and didn't see Zhang Leji, so he asked, Where's Zhang Leji? Bai Jianmu hurriedly replied, Master, third senior brother is still searching up there. After hearing Bai Jianmu's answer, Sun Xinjing snorted coldly. Were you still investigating? Hurry up and tell him to come down and see me. Bai Jianmu hurriedly responded and led Lu Huarong to the second floor. At the same time, he shouted loudly, Third senior brother, Master is looking for you. Come down quickly. After Bai Jianmu left, Sun Xinjing sat back down on the chair and checked the box in his hand. When he saw the box clearly, Sun Xinjing's face changed again. This box was made by Sun Xinjing himself. The entire box was made of bronze. There was no open lock on the outside, only a secret lock on the lid. As for the method to open the lid, only Sun Xinjing knew. Sun Xinjing was a trap master. He was sure that no one could open this bronze box that he made. It was true that no one could open it using normal methods. However, there were signs that someone had forcefully pried open the lid of the bronze box. It was indeed so. Sun Xinjing only took the lid of the box and gently lifted it, and the lid was opened. The tightly designed secret lock had long been broken by someone. After Sun Xinjing opened the bronze box and saw the situation inside, his face turned pale and his hands trembled uncontrollably. There was nothing in the bronze box. Sun Xinjing remembered very clearly that the blueprint was hidden in this box. This proved that the blueprint had been taken away by someone. Who was the person who took the blueprint? There was no need to guess. Zhang Liji. The box was found in Zhang Liji's room. Sun Xinjing couldn't think of anyone else who could take the blueprint other than Zhang Liji. Zhang Ming didn't know what happened. He only heard that some precious blueprint was lost. Now, looking at Sun Xinjing's expression, Zhang Ming understood. It must be something that he hid in the box that was stolen. Thinking of this, Zhang Ming's heart suddenly moved. He remembered what the person said just now. The box was found in Zhang Liji's bedroom. This meant that Zhang Liji was the one who stole the blueprint. However, Zhang Ming felt that something was wrong. When he first came, he didn't think that Zhang Liji would steal the blueprint. Not only that, after Zhang Liji heard what he said, he immediately looked for his master to investigate the matter. Would such a person steal the blueprint? Zhang Ming thought of this and couldn't help but reject this thought. If Zhang Liji really stole the blueprint, he should try his best not to mention it. Why would he get himself into trouble then? If he didn't care about this matter, they wouldn't be able to trace it back to him. Wouldn't that be safer? More importantly, Zhang Ming felt that Zhang Liji wasn't an idiot. At least, he wasn't an idiot who would hide the stolen item in such an obvious place. Under normal circumstances, as a machine engineer, Zhang Liji would definitely hide the item in the most secretive place. If a machine engineer's hidden item could be easily found by others, he wouldn't be considered a machine engineer. Even for a machine engineer, it wasn't an easy task to find another machine engineer's hidden item. How long did it take? Zhang Ming remembered clearly that the time taken by these people was too short. It didn't make sense for them to be able to find a machine engineer's hidden item in such a short period of time. Very quickly, footsteps were heard from the second floor again. Then, the four of them walked down the stairs together. Just as they reached the bottom of the stairs, Zhang Liji saw the bronze box in Sun Xinjing's hands. He was delighted at first, but then his face turned pale. When everyone arrived, Zhang Liji remembered very clearly that his master didn't have this bronze box with him. However, his master had this box with him now. More importantly, everyone knew that this bronze box was the box that his master kept the blueprint in. It was a good thing that they found the bronze box. However, they found it in his own residence. Thinking of this, Zhang Liji slowed down his footsteps. He turned his head to look at Bai Jianmu, and saw that Bai Jianmu was looking at him with a cold smile. Third senior brother, hurry up and leave. Master is still waiting for you. After hearing Bai Jianmu's words, Zhang Liji suddenly had an idea. However, he didn't say anything and walked towards his master again. Just as Zhang Liji walked in front of Sun Xinjing, he saw Sun Xinjing throw the bronze box in his hands in front of him. Zhang Liji, take a look at what this is. The box in Sun Xinjing's hands fell to the ground and rolled a few times before stopping in front of Zhang Liji. Seeing his master's rage, Zhang Liji was shocked. He hurriedly bent down to pick up the box and respectfully presented it with both hands. Master, why are you looking for me? After Sun Xinjing heard Zhang Liji's words, he coldly snorted and pointed at the box in Zhang Liji's hand. Zhang Liji, look at what you've done. Chapter 219. Hearing Sun Xinjing's angry rebuke, Zhang Liji was shocked and hurriedly asked, Master, what the hell is going on? Sun Xinjing slammed the table and said angrily, Zhang Liji, how dare you ask me what's going on? Open the box and take a look." After hearing Sun Xinjing's words, Zhang Leji couldn't care less. He hurriedly lifted the lid and looked inside the box. When he saw the situation inside the box, he couldn't help but exclaim, "Nothing." After the exclamation, Zhang Leji hurriedly looked up at Sun Xinjing and asked, "Master, where's the blueprint in the box?" This time, before Sun Xinjing could answer, Bai Jianmu said coldly, "Third senior brother, where's the blueprint? I think we should ask you." After Zhang Leji heard Bai Jianmu's words, he immediately flew into a rage. He suddenly turned around and pointed at Bai Jianmu, angrily saying, "Bai Jianmu, don't talk nonsense. How would I know where the blueprint in the box is?" After hearing Zhang Leji's answer, Sun Xinjing snorted coldly. "Zhang Leji, don't forget that this box was found in your bedroom. How could you ask someone else where the blueprint is?" Hearing this, Zhang Leji was shocked. He suddenly knelt on the ground and shouted, "Master, this has nothing to do with me. I didn't steal the blueprint." Before Zhang Leji could finish his explanation, he was interrupted by a somewhat impatient Sun Xinjing. Sun Xinjing turned to look at Bai Jianmu and said, "Tell me how you found the box." Hearing this, Bai Jianmu hurriedly replied, "Master, I went to search third senior brother's bedroom with junior brother Lu. As a result, we found this bronze box under his bed." Speaking of this, Bai Jianmu paused for a moment before continuing, "Junior brother Lu can testify for me on this matter." After hearing Bai Jianmu's answer, Sun Xinjing slowly turned to Zhang Leji and asked coldly, "Zhang Leji, what else do you want to say?" When Zhang Leji heard the conversation between Bai Jianmu and Sun Xinjing, he was so scared that his face turned ashen. He cursed in his heart. Why was there a bronze box in his bedroom? "Master, I definitely didn't steal the blueprints. You can only swear to the heavens that there must be a reason for this. Please investigate it." Hearing this, Sun Xinjing suddenly sighed and said slowly, "Zhang Leji, I'll give you a chance now. If you hand over the blueprint now, I can let bygones be bygones and forgive you this time." Sun Xinjing knew that the most important thing now was not to punish anyone, but to find the blueprint. As long as he could find the blueprint, nothing else mattered. As long as Zhang Leji took out the blueprint now, Sun Xinjing would definitely not punish him severely. At most, he would really expel him from his sect. As soon as Sun Xinjing's voice fell, Bai Jianmu spoke first. "Third senior apprentice brother, Master has already been extremely benevolent to you. Hurry up and take out the blueprints. Master will definitely not punish you severely. Hurry up and take them out, so that Master won't worry." After hearing Bai Jianmu's words, Zhang Leji's heart skipped a beat. He suddenly pointed at Bai Jianmu and shouted, "Master, it must be him. Bai Jianmu framed me. I didn't steal the blueprint. Bai Jianmu must have deliberately put the bronze box in my room when he went to search my room. Master, I would never do such a thing." After hearing Zhang Leji's explanation, Sun Xinjing turned to look at Bai Jianmu, but he didn't say anything. He just stared at Bai Jianmu. Seeing this, Bai Jianmu hurriedly cupped his fists and said, "Master, when I searched the room, junior brother Lu was watching. If third senior brother insists that I framed him, I have nothing to say. I can only ask junior brother Lu to testify for me." As soon as Bai Jianmu finished speaking, Lu Huarong stepped forward and cupped his fists. "Master, I can testify for senior brother by that this bronze box was indeed found under third senior brother's bed. Senior brother definitely didn't frame third senior brother. Master, please investigate." Hearing Lu Huarong's words, Sun Xinjing nodded. He turned his eyes back to Zhang Leji and asked slowly, "Zhang Leji, now that things have come to this, what else do you have to say?" After hearing Bai Jianmu and Lu Huarong's words, Zhang Leji already knew that things were not good. If it was only Bai Jianmu alone, it would be easy to deal with. But with Lu Huarong, it would be difficult to deal with this matter. Zhang Leji never expected that Bai Jianmu would want to search his room first. It turned out that he had this idea. However, even if he knew that Bai Jianmu had this idea, Zhang Leji still couldn't do anything. Thinking of the consequences of this matter, Zhang Leji's heart gradually sank, as if it had sunk into a 1,000-year-old ice cellar. Seeing that Zhang Liji didn't answer his question, Sun Xinjing said loudly, Zhang Liji, I'll give you one last chance. If you don't take out the blueprint, don't blame me for not respecting our relationship as master and disciple. Zhang Liji wiped the cold sweat off his forehead and said loudly, Master, if I was the one who stole the blueprint, why would I be so careless as to put the box in his room? Master, don't you think this is suspicious? When Sun Xinjing heard this, he was suddenly startled. A trace of doubt rose in his heart, and he gradually awoke from his rage. Zhang Liji was right. If Zhang Liji really stole the blueprint, why would he put the bronze box in his room? If it was for safety, he should have destroyed the bronze box long ago. As long as Zhang Liji destroyed the bronze box, Bai Jinmu naturally wouldn't be able to find this evidence today. Could it be? Thinking of this, Sun Xinjing turned to look at Bai Jinmu, puzzled. Seeing Sun Xinjing looking at him, Bai Jinmu knew that his master was suspecting him, so he hurriedly said, Master, you're right. This bronze box was found in third senior brother's bedroom. This is absolutely true, and you can't deny it. As for why third senior brother didn't destroy the bronze box, but left it in his room, this is also very easy to explain. Speaking of this, Bai Jinmu turned to look at Zhang Liji and said with a cold smile, Third senior brother, you left this bronze box behind because you want to frame someone at a critical moment to achieve your goal, right? You found this bronze box today because you didn't expect that someone would come to search it today. So you were careless, and let me catch you red-handed. Third senior brother, I'm right, right? After listening to Bai Jinmu's words, Zhang Liji was so angry that he wanted to beat Bai Jinmu into a pulp to vent his anger. However, this was just his imagination. If he really did that, he was afraid that this matter would be settled. Sun Xinjing would then think that he had attacked Bai Jinmu out of anger and humiliation. Chapter 220. After Sun Xinjing heard Bai Jinmu's words, although he still had doubts in his heart, he had to admit that Bai Jinmu's words were very reasonable. This bronze box was really useful. Just like what Bai Jinmu had said, Zhang Liji could use this bronze box to frame others at a critical moment. That was why he kept it. Thinking of this, Sun Xinjing's gaze turned cold again. He turned to look at Zhang Liji and shouted sternly, Zhang Liji, are you really not going to take out the blueprint? Hearing this, Zhang Liji hurriedly bowed to his master and said loudly, Master, I really didn't take the blueprint. Someone must be framing me. That's right, it must be Bai Jinmu. He must have suggested searching everyone's rooms to frame me. Master, I'm innocent. I didn't steal the blueprint. Seeing that Zhang Liji was unwilling to take out the blueprint, Bai Jinmu took a step forward and whispered to Sun Xinjing, Master, the blueprint is very important. In my opinion, if you only ask third senior brother to take out the blueprint, he definitely won't do it. Speaking of this, Bai Jinmu paused. He turned to look at Zhang Liji and sneered before continuing. Master, why don't you let me use some tricks to ask him? After Sun Xinjing heard Bai Jinmu's words, he was suddenly stunned. He naturally knew what Bai Jinmu meant. The tricks Bai Jinmu mentioned were nothing more than torturing Zhang Liji. However, was that appropriate? Seeing that Sun Xinjing was hesitating, Bai Jinmu hurriedly said again, Master, this blueprint is really too important to our sect. I think that in order to get it back as soon as possible, it wouldn't be too much even if we use some tricks. After all, this blueprint is too important. Master, please make a decision. This time, without waiting for Sun Xinjing's reply, Zhang Liji had already been enraged by Bai Jinmu. At this moment, Zhang Liji couldn't care less. He suddenly stood up and rushed toward Bai Jinmu, while roaring at the same time. Bai Jinmu, you despicable person, I'll kill you. Who would have thought that when Zhang Liji rushed in front of Bai Jinmu, he would be hit by Bai Jinmu's fist. Zhang Liji screamed and staggered back 3 or 4 steps before falling to the ground. Although Bai Jinmu threw a punch in a panic, the strength of his fist was not small. After Zhang Liji was hit by this punch, he fell to the ground. Although he struggled to stand up, he only felt incomparable pain in his body. For a moment, he actually couldn't stand up. Looking at Zhang Laji, who had fallen to the ground, Bai Jianmu snorted coldly and said slowly, "Third senior brother, I found out that you stole the blueprint. That's why you want to take revenge on me." At this point, Bai Jianmu turned to look at Sun Xinjing and clasped his fists. "Master, if it wasn't for the fact that I know some martial arts, I'm afraid that I would have been killed by the angry third senior brother. Master, please make a decision as soon as possible to prevent undue delay." Sun Xinjing didn't feel good when he saw Zhang Laji lying on the ground. He treated these disciples as if they were his own sons, and he never owed them anything. However, Zhang Laji was willing to betray him for the sake of a blueprint. No, there was also Yi Xian. If Zhang Laji was the one who stole the blueprint, then it must have been Yi Xian who told him where the blueprint was placed. Yi Xian, his most trusted disciple, betrayed him now. Thinking that these two people betrayed him for a blueprint, Sun Xinjing only felt a sense of desolation in his heart. This desolation slowly turned into anger. Looking at Zhang Laji, who had fallen to the ground, Sun Xinjing suddenly slammed the table and shouted, "Zhang Laji, if you don't take out the blueprint, you'll have to suffer." Zhang Laji tried several times, but couldn't stand up. He could only lie on the ground and say, "Master, I really didn't do it." As soon as Zhang Laji said this, he saw Sun Xinjing looking at Bai Jianmu. He knew that something bad was going to happen and hurriedly shouted, "Master, this disciple is really innocent. It really has nothing to do with me. It must be Bai Jianmu who wanted to frame me. That's why he was able to find a bronze box in my room. Right? It must have been Bai Jianmu who stole the blueprint. Otherwise, how could he have the bronze box?" Just now, Sun Xinjing turned to look at Bai Jianmu, wanting him to use some tricks to make Zhang Laji take out the blueprint. However, after hearing Zhang Laji's words, Sun Xinjing felt a sense of doubt again. Although the bronze box was found in Zhang Laji's room, if it was really like what Zhang Laji said, that Bai Jianmu deliberately framed him, didn't it mean that Bai Jianmu was the one who stole the blueprint? Thinking of this, Sun Xinjing felt even more puzzled. Yi Xian and Zhang Laji were suspected of stealing the blueprint, but so was Bai Jianmu. If Bai Jianmu stole the blueprint and made everyone think that Yi Xian was the one who stole the blueprint, then he framed Zhang Laji and took the opportunity to drag Zhang Laji down with him. As long as Yi Xian and Zhang Laji became suspects, then Bai Jianmu would benefit the most. Thinking of this, Sun Xinjing felt even more suspicious. However, when Bai Jianmu found the bronze box, Lu Huarong testified. If Bai Jianmu stole the blueprint and framed Zhang Laji with the bronze box, then why did Lu Huarong testify for him? Could it be that there was something wrong with Lu Huarong? Sun Xinjing felt that this problem was getting more and more complicated. If Zhang Laji was not the one who stole the blueprint, then was it really Bai Jianmu who stole the blueprint? Bai Jianmu saw that Sun Xinjing was just looking at him without saying anything, and in his heart he had a bad feeling, and hurriedly said, "Master, the bronze box was definitely found in third senior apprentice brother's room. This point, junior apprentice brother Lu can testify for this disciple. In addition, I don't know where you put the blueprint. Even if you want me to steal the blueprint, I can't do it. Master, please investigate. This matter must have been done by Yi Xian and third senior brother. Disciple suspects that the reason why I was able to find the bronze box at third senior brother's place was because third senior brother deliberately let me find it." Hearing this, Sun Xinjing's heart suddenly moved. Bai Jianmu continued, "Master, I originally wanted to search the study, but third senior brother asked me to search the bedroom, so he went to search the study himself. I suspect that third senior brother deliberately did this. He wanted me to find the bronze box, then take the opportunity to frame me. Otherwise, why would the bronze box be found so easily? I think, no matter who it is, it's impossible to put such an important thing in such an obvious place. Master, disciple suspects that the reason why we were able to find the bronze box so smoothly was because of third senior brother. He purposely placed the bronze box in an obvious place under the bed so that disciple could find it and achieve his goal of framing me." Chapter 221. After listening to Bai Jianmu's words, Sun Xinjing also nodded secretly. If what Bai Jianmu said was true, it was very possible. Zhang Leji deliberately let Bai Jianmu find the bronze box and then said that Bai Jianmu was framing him. Although there was a certain danger in doing so, there was also a high chance of success. Once it succeeded, Bai Jianmu would be the one who stole the blueprint and achieve his goal. Although there was such a possibility, the danger of this method was too high. Under such circumstances, 90% of the people would believe that Zhang Leji was the one who stole the blueprint. If he used this method to frame Bai Jianmu, wouldn't it be too dangerous? If this plan failed, wouldn't he be the one who stole the blueprint? Seeing a hint of hesitation in his master's eyes, Zhang Leji hurriedly said loudly, "Master, don't believe his words. If I stole the blueprint, even if I wanted to frame Bai Jianmu, I would never use such a stupid method. I would definitely think of a safer way." Bai Jianmu heard this and sneered. "Third senior brother, how could a person who dared to steal Master's blueprint be afraid of danger? Don't you know that the more dangerous something is, the easier it is for people to believe it? If you use other methods to frame me, although you will be safe, people will be doubtful. However, if you use this method to frame me, as long as it succeeds, not only will you be free from suspicion, but you will also be able to save Yi Xian and achieve your ultimate goal. As for me, I will be framed as the one who stole the blueprint." Speaking of this, Bai Jianmu turned his head again to look at Sun Xinjing and clasped his fist. "Master, I believe that the blueprint must be stolen by third senior brother and Yi Xian. If Master believes me, let me use some tricks to make third senior brother take out the blueprint. Isn't that the best way?" After hearing Bai Jianmu's words, Sun Xinjing hesitated in his heart. The words of these two people had a certain degree of logic. But how should he decide? The key now was to find the blueprint as soon as possible. But who stole the blueprint? If he let Bai Jianmu use some tricks on Zhang Leji, what if it wasn't Zhang Leji who stole the blueprint? Or rather, what if Bai Jianmu stole the blueprint and he thought it was Zhang Leji who stole it? What should he do if he let Bai Jianmu torture Zhang Leji? At this moment, Sun Xinjing didn't speak. No one dared to speak. Everyone was waiting for Sun Xinjing's decision. However, Sun Xinjing was hesitating now. He didn't know who stole the blueprint. Could he lock Zhang Leji and Bai Jianmu in the Repentance Pavilion? Zhang Leji was the culprit, was the one who stole? The culprit was the one who stole the blueprint, was the culprit. Was the culprit was the culprit. Who is the culprit? Purposely put the blame was the culprit. Although both of them were suspects, it did not seem appropriate to lock them up in the Repentance Pavilion. Just when Sun Xinjing was hesitating, he heard a voice in his ear. "Branch Leader's son, is this matter very difficult to handle?" After Sun Xinjing heard this sentence, he suddenly woke up from his contemplation. He turned his head and looked at the source of the voice. He saw that the person who spoke was Prince Zhang. Sun Xinjing was too excited just now. He forgot that there were two guests here. Thinking of this, Sun Xinjing said to Zhang Meng apologetically, "Prince Zhang, our sect has some matters to deal with. Please take a rest first. After we deal with these matters, I will send someone to invite the two of you. We will discuss your matter in detail." Zhang Meng listened to Sun Xinjing's answer and nodded. He turned his head and glanced at Zhang Leji and Bai Jianmu. Then, he looked at Sun Xinjing again and said with a smile, "Branch Leader's son, are you thinking about who is the culprit?" Sun Xinjing listened to Zhang Meng's words and nodded. "Indeed." Zhang Meng said, "Actually, Branch Leader's son doesn't need to be so worried. This matter is very simple. You just need to ask, and you will know who is lying." Sun Xinjing heard this, and his eyes suddenly lit up. He quickly asked, "Prince Zhang, how should I ask?" After listening to Sun Xinjing's words, Zhang Meng was about to speak when Bai Jianmu suddenly asked, "May I ask if this young master is a member of our sect?" After listening to Bai Jianmu's question, Zhang Meng shook his head. "No, I am here to ask someone to build a house for me." Bai Jianmu heard this and nodded. He turned to a disciple next to him and said loudly, "You, go and take this young master to rest." After instructing the disciple, Bai Jianmu turned his head to look at Zhang Meng and said with a smile, "This young master It's not convenient for outsiders to interfere in our sex affairs. I ask this young master to take a rest first. After we've dealt with the matters here, we'll entertain you." After saying this, Bai Jianmu stretched out his hand and made a gesture to Zhang Ming. Seeing this, Zhang Ming shook his head. "There is no need to rest. You are too slow in dealing with matters here. My matter is very urgent, so I want to help you and quickly deal with the matters here so that I can deal with my matter." After hearing Zhang Ming's words, Bai Jianmu sneered. Then, he slowly walked towards Zhang Ming. As he walked, he sneered, "This must be Prince Zhang. Didn't your elders teach you that it is very impolite to meddle in other people's affairs?" After hearing Bai Jianmu's words, Zhang Ming was a little unhappy. He was kind enough to help, and even Sun Xinjing agreed. This guy was still talking nonsense here. Not only that, he even said that his elders did not teach him well. This made Zhang Ming a little embarrassed. Bai Jianmu sneered and came to Zhang Ming's side. He stretched out his hand and patted Zhang Ming's shoulder. In a cold voice, he said, "Prince Zhang, I think you should go and rest quickly. You can't meddle in the matters here." As he spoke, Bai Jianmu grabbed Zhang Ming's shoulder tightly and pulled him to the side. Then, he turned his head and said to the disciple who came over, "Send this young master to rest." According to Bai Jianmu's plan, he would push Zhang Ming to the side with one hand, and then let the disciple take Zhang Ming to rest. This matter would be over. Even if he angered Zhang Ming, at most, he would apologize in the future and say more good words. In short, today's matter could not be ruined by others. Bai Jianmu had waited for so long and finally carried out the plan. Seeing that it was about to succeed, how could he allow others to ruin it? For this plan, Bai Jianmu could do anything. As long as he achieved his goal, he felt that it was worth it. As for what others thought, it had nothing to do with him. Chapter 222. Although Bai Jianmu's plan was very good, the development of the matter was completely different from what he had imagined. He grabbed Zhang Ming's hand and exerted force, but he realized that the other party did not even move. Bai Jianmu was shocked and hurriedly exerted more force. However, the other party still did not react at all and was still looking at him with a smile. Seeing the smile on Zhang Ming's face, Bai Jianmu was a little annoyed. He suddenly raised his other hand and grabbed Zhang Ming's other shoulder. At the same time, he exerted force with both hands and pushed forward forcefully, wanting to push Zhang Ming back to his original position. Unfortunately, Zhang Ming, who was not very strong, was like a stone pillar. He still did not move at all. Not only that, even the smile on his face did not seem to have changed. When Bai Jianmu saw this scene, he was shocked. He quickly let go of his hand and took 2 steps back, looking at Zhang Ming in surprise. If Zhang Ming's face showed a strained expression, he would still dare to continue trying. However, Zhang Ming's face did not change at all. The force he used just now was like a breeze, having no effect at all. Others might not know, but Bai Jianmu himself was quite clear. When he grabbed Zhang Ming with both hands and pushed with all his might, he had used almost all his strength, but the other party did not change at all. What did this mean? It meant that the other party's strength was definitely not inferior to his. The reason why Bai Jianmu dared to shout at Zhang Leji was that he was not afraid of Zhang Leji. In the South County branch, Bai Jianmu was not afraid of anyone because it was no exaggeration to say that he was the person with the highest martial arts skills here. If Bai Jianmu wanted to deal with Zhang Leji, he only needed to use one hand to beat Zhang Leji up. Therefore, he did not put Zhang Leji in his eyes. However, facing the unfathomable Zhang Ming, Bai Jianmu was a little hesitant. If he could avoid offending such an enemy, it was better to get along peacefully. Thinking of this, Bai Jianmu hurriedly raised his hand, cupped his fists towards Zhang Ming, and said with a smile, "This little brother, this matter that has happened in our sect is of great importance, so I would like to ask little brother to leave for a moment. After dealing with this matter, I will apologize in person, so I hope little brother can forgive me. Please." After saying this, Bai Jianmu modestly gestured to Zhang Ming. At the same time, he signaled to the disciples behind Zhang Ming with his eyes. The disciple standing next to Zhang Meng hurriedly bowed to Zhang Meng after seeing Bai Jianmu's signal and said, "Mister, please." Seeing this, Zhang Meng waved his hand indifferently. "No need, I can stay here." Seeing that Zhang Meng had no intention of leaving, Bai Jianmu could not help but frown. He hurriedly cupped his fists again and said, "Little brother, you also know the rules. It is better not to interfere in other people's sect matters, lest you break the rules." After hearing Bai Jianmu's words, Zhang Meng waved his hand again. "You don't have to be polite. Your branch leader has already said that I can stay, so this is not considered breaking the rules." When Bai Jianmu heard this, he was about to speak when Sun Xinjing suddenly said, "All right, let him stay." After saying this, Sun Xinjing waved his hand at Zhang Meng and said with a smile, "Prince Zhang, sit here." When Zhang Meng heard this, he nodded and no longer paid attention to Bai Jianmu. He quickly walked to Sun Xinjing and found a seat to sit down. After seeing Zhang Meng sit down, Sun Xinjing slowly asked, "Prince Zhang, just now you said that as long as we interrogate them, we will know who is faking it?" After hearing Sun Xinjing's question, Zhang Meng smiled and nodded. "Of course, for such things, as long as we ask, it will naturally be clear." After hearing Zhang Meng's words, Sun Xinjing's eyes suddenly lit up and he hurriedly asked, "Prince Zhang, are you confident?" Zhang Meng nodded again and said with a smile, "This is a very simple matter. Of course I am confident." After hearing Zhang Meng's answer, Sun Xinjing was suddenly overjoyed. He slammed the table and said with a smile, "Well, I will let you handle this matter. What do you think? Is this okay?" Zhang Meng nodded. "No problem." The reason why Sun Xinjing let Zhang Meng handle this matter was not because he trusted Zhang Meng, but because he really had no other choice. The several disciples each had their own reasons, and these words were very reasonable in Sun Xinjing's ears. The key problem now was that Bai Jianmu found the bronze box that contained the blueprint in Zhang Leji's room. However, Zhang Leji did not admit that the box was from his room. Bai Jianmu was certain that this thing was from Zhang Leji's room. Between these two opinions, Sun Xinjing didn't know who to believe. Bai Jianmu found the bronze box that contained the blueprint in Zhang Leji's room. The key was that he had a witness. When he went to search the room, Lu Huarong and he searched together. Lu Huarong could testify for him that the bronze box containing the blueprint was indeed found in Zhang Leji's room. The evidence was conclusive. Logically speaking, Zhang Leji should not quibble anymore. However, he turned around and said that Bai Jianmu was suspicious. The reason why he could find the bronze box in his room was that he deliberately put it in the room and used it to frame him. Not only that, Zhang Leji also believed that the blueprint was Bai Jianmu's. Otherwise, Bai Jianmu wouldn't have the bronze box. Looking at the expressions of the two, it didn't seem like they were lying. However, in such a tit-for-tat matter, one of them must be lying. The question was, who was the lying person? Now, the bronze box containing the blueprint had been found. Next, as long as he found out who was lying, he should be able to find the blueprint. Most importantly, who was the lying person? On this point, Sun Xinjing couldn't be sure. Now, nothing was important. The most important thing was to get the blueprint back. Since he couldn't do it, and Zhang Meng said that he had a way, then he would let him try. Anyway, he wouldn't lose anything. It was also because of these reasons that Sun Xinjing decided to believe Zhang Meng's words and let Zhang Meng investigate this case for him. He wanted to find out who was lying and who was the disciple who stole his blueprint. Although Zhang Meng didn't have a complete understanding of this matter, he had heard about it from the other disciples before coming here. Then, he came to Zhang Leji's place and listened to Zhang Leji's explanation. Thus, he more or less understood the whole matter. Just now, he had been watching from the side. Naturally, he knew what happened clearly. The person who pushed him found the bronze box in the room of the person lying on the ground. What everyone was arguing about was who was lying. This bronze box was placed in the room by the person lying on the ground, and the person who pushed him deliberately framed the person lying on the ground. Chapter 223. This was where the dispute lay. Thinking of this, Zhang Ming waved his hand at Bai Jianmu and Zhang Liji and said loudly, "Okay, come here. Let me ask you." After hearing Zhang Ming's words, Bai Jianmu's gaze turned cold. However, when he turned to look at his master who was sitting at the head of the table, he clenched his teeth and quickly walked over to Zhang Ming. At this moment, Zhang Liji had already recovered a lot. He sat up from the ground. After hearing Zhang Ming shout, Mei Guangji quickly stepped forward to help Zhang Liji up and brought him in front of Zhang Ming. Seeing that the two of them were already in front of him, Zhang Ming turned his head to look at Bai Jianmu. He pointed to the bronze box on the ground and asked, "You found this bronze box in his room, right?" Bai Jianmu didn't say anything and just nodded. Seeing Bai Jianmu nod, Zhang Ming turned to look at Zhang Liji and asked, "Did you find that bronze box in your room? Or should I say, is that bronze box yours?" Hearing Zhang Ming's question, Zhang Liji immediately shook his head and said loudly, "No, that bronze box doesn't belong to me. I didn't steal the blueprint." After hearing Zhang Liji's answer, Zhang Ming nodded and said, "You mean that bronze box doesn't belong to you?" But speaking of this, Zhang Ming paused for a moment. He pointed at Bai Jianmu and continued, "Didn't you hear him say that he found it in your room?" Hearing this, Zhang Liji hurriedly answered loudly, "He's talking nonsense. That bronze box doesn't belong to me. He wants to frame me with it." After hearing Zhang Liji's answer, Zhang Ming frowned and said, "You said that he framed you. Do you have any reason or evidence?" After listening to Zhang Ming's question, Zhang Liji was stunned. For a while, he couldn't answer Zhang Ming's question. Just now, when everyone went to search, they split up into groups of two. Zhang Liji and Tang Jianan were in the same group. Bai Jianmu and Lu Huarong were in the same group. They searched their own rooms, so naturally, they couldn't see what each other was doing. Needless to say, there was no evidence to prove that Bai Jianmu had framed him. Seeing that Zhang Liji didn't answer his question, Zhang Ming asked again, "Since there's no evidence to prove that he's framing you, it means that this thing should be yours, right?" After Zhang Liji heard Zhang Ming's words, he suddenly became anxious and said loudly, "Prince Zhang, I'm not that kind of person. Think about it. If I really stole the blueprint, why would I ask my master to reinvestigate this matter? Wouldn't that be asking for trouble? Young Master Zhang, think about it carefully. When you first arrived, wasn't it me who went to look for Master and gathered everyone?" After hearing Zhang Liji's words, Zhang Ming nodded and said, "You're right, that's true. But even so, it doesn't prove that the bronze box doesn't belong to you." This time, without waiting for Zhang Ming to speak, Bai Jianmu had already spoken first. "Young Master Zhang, you're absolutely right. What he probably did it for you to see. Third senior brother did this so that no one would suspect him. That's why he asked his master to gather everyone." Speaking up to this point, Bai Jianmu paused and turned to look at Zhang Liji. He said loudly, "Third senior brother, before this, the biggest suspect was Yixian. Naturally, no one would suspect you. What you did will only make everyone less suspicious of you. What about you, third senior brother? Can you use this opportunity to carry out your plan?" Zhang Liji was furious after hearing Bai Jianmu's words. He roared in a hoarse voice, "You're talking nonsense. What plan do I have? I asked Master to gather everyone just to find out who stole the blueprints. What plan do I have? What purpose do I have?" Bai Jianmu didn't get angry when he heard Zhang Liji shouting. He just smiled faintly and turned to look at Zhang Ming. "Prince Zhang, you've just arrived here, so you don't know what's going on here. Only Yixian knows where my master put the blueprint. The others don't know where my master put it. So, the blueprint can only be stolen by Yixian. But what's Yixian's motive for stealing the blueprint? Prince Zhang, you might not know. My master is about to resign from his position as the branch leader, so the position will be empty. Yixian wants to be the branch leader, so he stole my master's blueprint to frame someone else. He wants to get rid of his rival, so he could be the branch leader more securely. Of course, when Yixian stole the drawing, he had already thought about it. If the drawing was lost, as the only one who knew where it was kept, he would definitely be suspected. Therefore, after stealing the drawing, he left it with third senior brother. Then he asked third senior brother to work for him outside and get rid of his competitors. Unfortunately, Yixian didn't expect third senior brother to be too careless. Or maybe he didn't expect us to search his room so quickly. That's why we found the bronze box with the blueprint. After saying this, Bai Jianmu glanced coldly at Zhang Leji. When Zhang Leji heard Bai Jianmu's words, he immediately flew into a rage. He pointed at Bai Jianmu and roared loudly. Bai Jianmu, you despicable person. You stole the blueprint, and now you're framing me as the thief. Before Zhang Leji could finish his words, Bai Jianmu suddenly shouted, Zhang Leji, now that the evidence is conclusive, you still dare to quibble? Do you think everyone is a fool? After Bai Jianmu finished speaking, Lu Huarong also stepped forward and said, Third senior brother, a man dares to take responsibility for his actions. Since you dared to steal the blueprint, you should admit it. Why do you have to be like this? You don't even dare to admit it. You even want to frame someone else. Third senior brother, wake up. Don't go astray and do something that will betray the sect. Hearing Lu Huarong's words, Zhang Leji was so angry that he couldn't speak. He raised his hand and pointed at Lu Huarong. Lu Huarong, I didn't expect you to be such a despicable person. You even came out with Bai Jianmu to deceive people. I was wrong about you. As soon as Zhang Leji's voice fell, Tang Jianan also jumped out and said loudly, Third junior brother, since the bronze box with the blueprint was found in your room, it can be regarded as conclusive evidence. Just admit it. If you take out the blueprint now, for the sake of our previous friendship, Master will not punish you severely. Third junior brother, I beg you, don't do something that will betray the sect. After saying this, Tang Jianan felt that it wasn't enough, so he cupped his fists and bowed deeply to Zhang Leji. After hearing Tang Jianan and Lu Huarong's words, Bai Jianmu turned to look at Zhang Leji and said coldly. Chapter 224. Bai Jianmu said coldly, Third senior brother, just admit it. Otherwise, I'm afraid you'll have to suffer later. When that time comes, you won't be able to live with your pride. Bah! After hearing Bai Jianmu's words, Zhang Leji suddenly spat on the ground and cursed loudly. Bai Jianmu, you despicable person. Put away your tricks. I won't admit it even if I die. Just give up on it. After hearing Zhang Leji's answer, Bai Jianmu's eyes flashed coldly. He turned to look at Zhang Meng and said with a smile, Prince Zhang, now that the evidence is conclusive, but third senior brother still doesn't dare to admit it. I think it's better to use some tricks on him and make him hand over the blueprint. That way, we won't waste any more time. Although Bai Jianmu's words were said calmly, in Zhang Leji's ears, it was like the roar of a demon. It made his heart turn cold. He naturally knew about the tricks that Bai Jianmu was talking about. To put it bluntly, Bai Jianmu wanted to use torture on him to make him confess. Thinking about Bai Jianmu's methods, Zhang Leji couldn't help but shudder. Although he wasn't weak, under Bai Jianmu's methods, he really couldn't guarantee that he wouldn't confess. This matter had nothing to do with Zhang Leji. He didn't gain any benefits, so naturally, he didn't need to bear this responsibility. If this matter was pushed to Yi Xian, then all the problems would be solved. Zhang Leji knew very well that this was the result that Bai Jianmu wanted. As long as he identified Yi Xian as the person who stole the blueprint, then he would immediately be safe. However, could he really do that? If he identified Yi Xian as the person who stole the blueprint, it would be easy to say, but the consequences would be quite serious. Yi Xian's life would probably be over. Bai Jianmu found the bronze box that contained the blueprint in his room. From that moment on, Zhang Leji already knew that this matter was definitely done by Bai Jianmu. Even if Bai Jianmu didn't steal the blueprint personally, he probably couldn't get away with it. Since Bai Jianmu was the person who stole the drawings, then Yi Xian, who was locked in the Repent Pavilion, naturally couldn't be the person who stole the drawings. If he identified Yi Xian as the person who stole the blueprints, would his conscience be at ease? Zhang Leji admitted that although he wasn't a righteous person, he really couldn't do something like distorting the truth and framing others. However, if he didn't do this, Bai Jianmu would use some tricks on him. At that time, would he really be able to endure? Thinking of these questions, Zhang Leji felt his body getting colder and colder. as if he had fallen into a 1,000-year-old ice cellar. He was almost frozen solid. After listening to Bai Jianmu's words, Zhang Ming nodded and said with a smile, "You are right. At the critical moment, using some small tricks can indeed play an unexpected role." After hearing Zhang Ming's words, Bai Jianmu was immediately overjoyed. As long as Zhang Ming agreed to use some small tricks, he was 100% sure that he could make Zhang Liji admit that Yi Xian was the one who stole the blueprints. Not only that, but Zhang Liji would also admit that he was in cahoots with Yi Xian and that he had something to do with the matter of the blueprints. Bai Jianmu had this confidence because he had the ability to do so. As long as Zhang Liji identified Yi Xian as the person who stole the blueprints, then all his plans would succeed perfectly. The position of the branch leader could only belong to Bai Jianmu. Thinking of this, Bai Jianmu, who had always been calm, became a little excited. He hurriedly cupped his fists at Zhang Ming and said with a laugh, "Since Prince Zhang agrees with my view, then I will let Prince Zhang see how long Zhang Liji can last." Huh! At the end of his sentence, Bai Jianmu couldn't help but throw his head back and laugh. Success was right in front of him. As long as he used some small tricks, Bai Jianmu believed that even if Zhang Liji was made of iron, he would still be able to make him talk. After a while, Bai Jianmu stopped laughing. He turned around and sneered as he slowly walked toward Zhang Liji. When he was in front of Zhang Liji, Bai Jianmu said coldly, "Zhang Liji, in order to find the blueprints as soon as possible, don't blame me for being ruthless." After saying this, Bai Jianmu slowly raised his hand. He was prepared to subdue Zhang Liji first before using some tricks to make Zhang Liji confess. Seeing Bai Jianmu slowly raise his hand, Zhang Liji only felt the cold sweat on his forehead increasing. His heart was getting colder and colder. He wanted to resist, but he also knew that it was useless. They had been fellow disciples for so many years. Zhang Liji knew Bai Jianmu's martial arts very well. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that Bai Jianmu could defeat him with just one finger. The difference in strength between the two of them was so great that Zhang Liji couldn't resist even if he wanted to. Moreover, when Bai Jianmu said that he would use some tricks, his master and Prince Zhang didn't object. The two of them didn't object, which meant that they tacitly agreed to this matter. Under such circumstances, if he resisted, the consequences would be very serious. However, if he didn't resist, the consequences would be even more serious. If he couldn't withstand Bai Jianmu's tricks and said something that he shouldn't say, then it would be terrible. However, could he resist? Even if he used all his strength, it would be useless. Thinking of this, Zhang Liji sighed in his heart. Then he closed his eyes. He didn't blame his master for this matter, because the bronze box that contained the blueprints was indeed found by Bai Jianmu in his room. If it were him, he would also suspect that he stole the blueprints. The person Zhang Liji hated was Bai Jianmu, because he already knew that the person who stole the blueprints must have had the bronze box. Otherwise, there wouldn't be a bronze box that contained the blueprints. This meant that Bai Jianmu must be the person who stole the blueprints. Thinking of this, the person who stole the blueprints became the person who used some tricks, and he became the suspect of stealing the blueprints. Thinking of this, Zhang Liji's heart was in turmoil, but there was nothing he could do. Since his master had agreed to let Bai Jianmu use some tricks, it was meaningless for him to say anything else. At this moment, Zhang Liji knew that other than clenching his teeth and persevering, he had no other way to deal with the situation in front of him. Wait a minute. Just when Bai Jianmu was about to make a move, he suddenly heard Zhang Ming's voice and was stunned for a moment. Then, he turned to look at Zhang Ming and asked curiously, "Prince Zhang, what's wrong?" After hearing Bai Jianmu's question, Zhang Ming smiled and said, "All right, you didn't say clearly just now. What kind of tricks are you going to use?" After hearing Zhang Ming's question, Bai Jianmu was stunned again and answered, "Small tricks. Of course it's a trick to make Zhang Liji tell the truth." Zhang Ming nodded and asked again, "The small tricks you mentioned, don't tell me you want to make a move on him." Chapter 225. After Bai Jianmu heard Zhang Ming's question, he was stunned. After a long while, He reacted and asked doubtfully, Prince Zhang, the little trick you mentioned, isn't it making a move on them? Zhang Meng smiled and nodded. Of course. If it was a move, why would I ask you to use little tricks? Can't others do it? After Bai Jianmu heard Zhang Meng's words, his face couldn't help but become very ugly. Zhang Meng's words were very rude. After being in the South County branch for so many years, no one dared to speak to him like this. However, seeing that he was about to succeed, Bai Jianmu didn't want to care too much about it. As long as his plan succeeded, he would think of a way to deal with him. For now, it was better not to complicate matters. Thinking of this, Bai Jianmu turned to look at Zhang Meng and asked with a smile, Prince Zhang, you saw it too. Zhang Liji refused to admit it. If we don't use some little tricks, I'm afraid he will never recruit anyone. Speaking of this, Bai Jianmu paused for a moment before continuing. Prince Zhang, you don't know, but this blueprint is very important to our sect. If we don't find this blueprint as soon as possible and let it leak out, the consequences will be very serious. Therefore, in order to find the blueprint as soon as possible, I think we still have to use some necessary little tricks. Prince Zhang, what do you think? After Zhang Meng heard Bai Jianmu's words, he shook his head and said bluntly, Since you only know how to use your so-called little tricks, then step aside. There's no need for your little tricks here for the time being. As soon as Zhang Meng said this, everyone around was stunned. Bai Jianmu was even angrier. In front of so many people, he didn't give him face. How could Bai Jianmu bear this? Seeing that Zhang Meng didn't listen to him, Bai Jianmu felt that there was no need to talk to him anymore. He turned to look at Sun Xinjing, cupped his fists, and said, Master, the blueprint is of great importance. Please don't be merciful anymore. Finding the blueprint as soon as possible is the right thing to do. Otherwise, if this matter drags on, no one can guarantee that the blueprint won't leak out. Master, please make a decision as soon as possible. Don't give the thief a chance. After hearing Bai Jianmu's words, Sun Xinjing's heart suddenly trembled. He hurriedly turned his head to look at Zhang Meng and said, Prince Zhang, what do you think? Before Sun Xinjing finished his words, he was interrupted by Zhang Meng, who waved his hand. Branch leader's son. Using small tricks can only make him confess under torture. But what is the truth of the matter? After we use a little trick, even if he admitted it, would he admit it because he was forced to do so? So, I think that if we can avoid using small tricks, we should try our best not to use small tricks. We should convince people with virtue and reason. This is the right thing to do. Branch leader's son. If we find evidence to prove that he is the one who stole the blueprint, then he can't deny it even if he doesn't want to. After listening to Zhang Meng's words, Sun Xinjing nodded. To be honest, he didn't want to use small tricks on his disciple, but that blueprint was too important. Bai Jianmu was right just now. If that blueprint really leaked out, then he, Sun Xinjing, would become the sinner of Tianji sect. It was also because of this reason that he acquiesced to Bai Jianmu, allowing him to use small tricks at the crucial moment. The purpose was naturally to find the blueprint as soon as possible. Sun Xinjing thought for a while, but felt that Zhang Meng's words were a little inappropriate. He saw everything that happened just now. These disciples were all blaming each other. One said that he stole it, the other said that he stole it. In the end, there was still no result at all. If they didn't use small tricks, then after a while, wouldn't the result be the same? At this point, Sun Xinjing felt that it was necessary to remind Zhang Meng. So he said, Prince Zhang, if we don't use small tricks, are you confident that you can find the person who stole the blueprint? After hearing Sun Xinjing's question, Zhang Meng didn't shake his head or nod. He just said lightly, I should be able to. After hearing Zhang Meng's answer, Sun Xinjing was stunned and didn't recover for a long time. According to Zhang Meng's words, they should be able to find the blueprint. Or rather, they might not be able to find the blueprint. After understanding the meaning of Zhang Meng's words, Sun Xinjing was a little anxious and hurriedly said, Since Prince Zhang isn't confident, then I think we should use small tricks. At this point, Sun Xinjing paused for a while before continuing. Prince Zhang, to be honest, that blueprint is too important to our sect. We have to find it as soon as possible. If Prince Zhang isn't confident, then I think we should use small tricks. After hearing Sun Xinjing's words, Zhang Ming's eyes suddenly lit up. He hurriedly turned to look at Sun Xinjing, thought for a while, and said with a smile, "Branch leader's son, since the blueprint is so important, then I'll help you find it. Can you promise me one thing?" Hearing Zhang Ming's request, Sun Xinjing was stunned and then said happily, "Prince Zhang, since you said that, did you think of a way to find the blueprint?" After hearing Sun Xinjing's question, Zhang Ming nodded without hesitation. "Yes, but since that blueprint is so important after I find it, it shouldn't be too much to promise me one thing." Seeing Zhang Ming's confidence, Sun Xinjing was even happier and hurriedly nodded. Sure, sure. As long as the blueprint is found, everything is negotiable. Don't mention one thing." Sun Xinjing's words suddenly stopped. He originally wanted to say that there was no need to mention one thing. Even if there were 10 things, he would agree to Zhang Ming's request. However, he suddenly remembered that if Zhang Ming really asked for 10 things, wouldn't that be a headache? Therefore, he didn't finish his sentence. However, although Sun Xinjing didn't finish his sentence, Zhang Ming didn't mind at all. He didn't need Sun Xinjing to agree to many things. Just one thing was enough. Seeing that Sun Xinjing agreed to his condition, Zhang Ming nodded in satisfaction. He turned to look at Sun Xinjing and asked, "The bronze box with the blueprint was found in your room. You won't deny this, right?" Originally, when Zhang Laji saw that Bai Jianmu was going to come over and play some tricks on him, he already felt that he was done for this time. However, he didn't expect that Bai Jianmu would be stopped by Zhang Ming. This made him feel overjoyed. Then, hearing Zhang Ming say that he was sure to find the blueprint with such confidence, Zhang Laji suddenly felt a glimmer of hope. If Prince Zhang could really find the blueprint, wouldn't it immediately prove his innocence? After hearing Zhang Ming's question, Zhang Laji hurriedly shook his head. Chapter 226. After hearing Zhang Ming's question, Zhang Laji hurriedly replied, "Prince Zhang, although the bronze box was found in my room, I can swear to God that it doesn't belong to me." Speaking of this, Zhang Laji suddenly turned to look at Bai Jianmu and said loudly, "It's him. It must be Bai Jianmu who wants to frame me." So he pretended to find the bronze river in my room. After hearing Zhang Laji's answer, Zhang Ming nodded and said, "In that case, the bronze box doesn't belong to you. Did Bai Jianmu give it to you because he wanted to frame you?" Hearing this, Zhang Laji hurriedly nodded and said, "That's right. It must be Bai Jianmu who wants to frame me." So he pretended to take the bronze box out of my room. After hearing Zhang Laji's answer, Zhang Ming turned to look at Bai Jianmu and asked, "Is your name Bai Jianmu?" After hearing Zhang Ming's question, Bai Jianmu suddenly flew into a rage. Bai Jianmu was much older than Zhang Ming, but Zhang Ming called him by his name without giving him any face. Although Bai Jianmu was angry, he also knew that it wasn't the time to be angry. He could only suppress his anger and nodded. "Yes?" Zhang Ming asked. "Zhang Laji said that the bronze box he found in his room belongs to you. You deliberately put it in his room because you wanted to frame him. Do you have any explanation for this?" Bai Jianmu knew that it wasn't the time to act on impulse, so he replied, "Prince Zhang, why would I frame him? If I stole the blueprint and took out the bronze box, wouldn't others suspect me?" After hearing Bai Jianmu's answer, Zhang Ming nodded and said slowly, "But no one suspects you when you took out the bronze box." Hearing this, Bai Jianmu was stunned. Then, he said angrily, "Prince Zhang, are you suspecting me? Are you suspecting me of framing Zhang Laji?" When Zhang Ming heard this, he shook his head. "Bai Jianmu, don't be so agitated before we find the blueprint." At this point, Zhang Ming paused. He reached out and pointed around the hall. Then, he slowly said, "Before we find the blueprint, everyone here is a suspect, not just you." As soon as Zhang Ming finished speaking, there was an uproar in the field. A moment later, Tang Jinan took a step forward and said loudly, "Prince Zhang, I don't know where you came from, but what right do you have to suspect us? Only Yi Xian knows the location where Master put the blueprints. Why don't you tell me, other than Yi Xian, who else would have the chance to steal the blueprints?" After hearing Tang Jinan's words, He turned to look at him and asked slowly, "What is your name?" Although Zhang Ming didn't have much experience in dealing with this kind of situation, he felt that people who jumped out to cause trouble were usually not good people. Therefore, he didn't need to be polite when dealing with people who were looking for trouble. After hearing Zhang Ming's question, Tang Jinan almost exploded in anger. Zhang Ming's way of questioning was like interrogating a criminal. How could he not be angry? Facing Zhang Ming's question, Tang Jinan didn't know whether to answer or not. Just as he was hesitating, he heard Zhang Ming ask again, "Why aren't you answering? Don't tell me you don't have a name?" Hearing Zhang Ming's blunt question, Tang Jinan only felt his hands trembling. At the same time, his face began to feel a little hot. Although Tang Jinan's skills weren't the best among these disciples, he was still the second senior brother after all. The other junior brothers still respected him on the surface. However, Zhang Ming's question now was simply a slap to his face. However, at this time, it wasn't the time to be angry. After all, everyone had already seen that Master had asked this person to investigate this matter. If he didn't answer, wouldn't it mean that he didn't cooperate with the investigation? If it aroused suspicion, it would ruin things. Thinking of this, Tang Jianan took a deep breath, suppressed the anger in his heart, and said slowly, "My name is Tang Jianan. I'm a second senior brother here. Prince Zhang, you haven't answered my question just now." After hearing Tang Jianan's answer, Zhang Ming waved his hand at him. "All right, since you've reported your name, then step aside. I'll ask you later." After hearing Zhang Ming's answer, the suppressed anger in Tang Jianan's heart burst out again. Zhang Ming's way of doing things was like calling for a cat or a dog on the roadside. He really didn't take this second senior brother seriously. Thinking of this, Tang Jianan's eyes widened and he asked loudly, "Prince Zhang, although Master asked you to investigate this matter, if you don't listen to other people's opinions, how are you going to investigate this matter? I think you should just forget about it, and let us investigate it ourselves." After hearing Tang Jianan's words, the smile on Zhang Ming's face suddenly disappeared. He turned to look at Tang Jianan and asked word by word, "So, you're saying that you're very dissatisfied with my method of investigation?" As soon as Zhang Ming finished speaking, Tang Jianan felt as if the surrounding air had become solid and was constantly pressing against him. This force was so strong that it almost made it hard for him to breathe. Not only that, but Tang Jianan also felt that his surroundings were deathly silent. The only sound was his heart beating wildly. He could no longer see the people in the hall. It was as if he was the only one left in the hall. This pressure was getting stronger and stronger. Tang Jianan felt as if he would turn into nothingness under this pressure at any time. "Brother Ming, it's more important to start investigating the case. Don't bother with him." Just as Tang Jianan was about to lose all hope, Zhang Xiuming's voice was heard. At this moment, Tang Jianan suddenly felt that the surrounding pressure had suddenly dissipated. A sense of relief welled up in his heart. At this moment, he couldn't stand anymore and involuntarily sat down on the ground. After glancing at Tang Jianan, who was sweating profusely, Zhang Ming turned his head away and no longer looked at him. He was just an ant. What was there to look at? Zhang Ming turned his head to look at Bai Jianmu and asked with a smile, "Bai Jianmu, you said that the bronze box wasn't yours. Do you have any evidence?" After hearing Zhang Ming's question, Bai Jianmu was stunned. He had been looking at Tang Jianan just now because Tang Jianan's expression was too strange. It was as if he had epilepsy. His face was pale and he was sweating profusely. In the end, he even sat on the ground like a fool. Seeing this scene, Bai Jianmu was a little puzzled. Could it be that this second senior brother was sick? The point was, even if he was sick, he shouldn't have acted up at this time. When the plan was at a critical moment, Tang Jianan had acted up. Wouldn't that mean that they had lost a helper? Chapter 227. After hearing Zhang Ming's question, Bai Jianmu reacted and said, "Prince Zhang, the bronze box was indeed found in Zhang Leji's bedroom. If you don't believe me, you can ask junior brother Lu. You will know the truth." Zhang Ming nodded after hearing Bai Jianmu's words. Just as he was about to speak, Lu Huarong stepped forward and spoke. Young Master Zhang. That is indeed the case. When we were searching the room, I was in the same group as Senior Brother Bai. Senior Brother Bai found the bronze box in third Senior Brother's room. I can testify to that because when the bronze box was found, I was at the side. After hearing Lu Huarong's words, Zhang Ming glanced at him again and said slowly, "Well, since you can testify for Bai Jianmu, you can go out now. I will ask you alone later." After hearing Zhang Ming's words, everyone was stunned. They didn't know what Zhang Ming was going to do. Lu Huarong was testifying for Bai Jianmu. Shouldn't this be the time to testify in person? If Lu Huarong went out, how could he testify? Of course, there were also smart people who understood the reason behind it after thinking for a while. Bai Jianmu was one of the smart people. He just muttered to himself for a while, and his face suddenly changed. He knew what Zhang Ming was going to do. Being interrogated alone was definitely not a good thing for Bai Jianmu and Lu Huarong. If the two people's answers were the same, it proved that they were telling the truth. If they said different things, it proved that they were lying. Sun Xinjing also understood Zhang Ming's meaning, and his eyes lit up. If they followed Zhang Ming's method, they should be able to verify whether Bai Jianmu or Zhang Leji was lying. The bronze box containing the blueprint had already appeared. The next problem was actually very simple. If the bronze box was indeed found in Zhang Leji's bedroom, it proved that the blueprint was definitely with Zhang Leji. Even if he wanted to deny it, there was no way to deny it. In other words, if Bai Jianmu was the one who framed Zhang Leji, it meant that the bronze box belonged to Bai Jianmu, and the blueprint was naturally in Bai Jianmu's hands. Of course, the most important thing now was to prove who was the liar. As long as the liar was found, the case would basically be over. Thinking of this, Sun Xinjing saw that Lu Huarong was still standing there hesitantly and didn't leave the hall. He couldn't help but shout, "Lu Huarong, what are you still standing there for? Hurry up and leave." After Lu Huarong heard Sun Xinjing's words, he subconsciously glanced at Bai Jianmu. Lu Huarong was not stupid. He understood the meaning behind Zhang Ming's words. If Zhang Ming really did that, it would be really bad. However, although the situation wasn't good, Lu Huarong wasn't worried. Because in Zhang Leji's bedroom, Bai Jianmu and he had already discussed what to say. Even if they were interrogated alone, there was nothing to be afraid of. Thinking of this, and seeing Bai Jianmu's indifferent expression, Lu Huarong let out a long breath. He clasped his fist at Sun Xinjing and turned to walk out of the door. Looking at Lu Huarong's back, Bai Jianmu secretly exclaimed that it was a close call. At the beginning, when Bai Jianmu said that he wanted to search Zhang Leji's room, he actually had this idea in mind. During the investigation, although Zhang Leji couldn't save Yi Xian, Bai Jianmu couldn't drag Zhang Leji down with him. Everyone blamed each other, but no one could convince the other. His master looked hesitant, so Bai Jianmu wanted to use a strong medicine to make his master completely believe that Yi Xian and Zhang Leji were the ones who stole the blueprint. That was evidence, the key evidence. What better evidence was there than the bronze box that contained the blueprint? That was the real reason why Bai Jianmu wanted to search Zhang Leji's room. From the beginning, Bai Jianmu didn't plan to search other people's rooms because it was unnecessary. Since the bronze box was found in Zhang Leji's room, the blueprint must have been stolen by Zhang Leji and Yi Xian. There was no need to search other people's rooms. Bai Jianmu remembered very clearly that when he and Lu Huarong entered Zhang Leji's room and took out the bronze box, Lu Huarong was so scared that his face turned pale and he was almost speechless. Under Bai Jianmu's persuasion, Lu Huarong gradually calmed down and completely joined Bai Jianmu's side. After that, Bai Jianmu and Lu Huarong didn't search the room anymore. Instead, they began to discuss what to say in response to their master's questions. Bai Jianmu and Lu Huarong weren't stupid. They knew that Sun Xinjing would definitely ask them questions, so they were very detailed. They were afraid that there would be flaws. The two of them didn't leave Zhang Leji's room until they were sure that there were no flaws. Bai Jianmu wasn't afraid when he heard Zhang Ming say that he would ask them separately. He was just calm in his heart. "You want to use this method to deal with me? You're still far from being able to do that." Seeing Lu Huarong walk out of the hall, Zhang Ming asked slowly, "Bai Jianmu." Lu Huarong went out. "Now, tell me how you found the bronze box." After listening to Zhang Meng's question, Bai Jianmu nodded. Then he clasped his fist at Sun Xinjing and slowly told him what happened just now. Junior Liu and I originally wanted to search third senior brother's study, but third senior brother beat us to it, so we went to search his bedroom. After we arrived at the bedroom, we began to search. First, we searched the cabinet in the room. After we didn't find anything, we began to search other places. In the end, we found this box under third senior brother's bed. After listening to Bai Jianmu's explanation, Sun Xinjing nodded. Then, he turned to look at Zhang Liji and asked, Zhang Liji, why didn't you let them search the study? Is the blueprint in the study? After hearing Sun Xinjing's question, Zhang Liji hurriedly replied, Master, it's not like that. I just went upstairs before Bai Jianmu and went directly to the study. I didn't stop Bai Jianmu from searching the study. You can ask Junior Mei about this. He can prove it for me. After hearing Zhang Liji's answer, Sun Xinjing turned to look at Mei Guangji and asked, Is that true? After hearing his master's question, Mei Guangji hurriedly replied, Yes, third senior brother didn't lie. After listening to their answers, Sun Xinjing nodded. Then, he turned to look at Zhang Meng and asked, Prince Zhang, do you have any other questions? Hearing this, Zhang Meng shook his head. No, I think we can let Lu Huarong in now. Since Lu Huarong walked out of the hall, his heart had been in a constant state of anxiety. He was originally a coward. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been so quiet every day. This matter was very important. If there was a slight mistake, the consequences would be unimaginable. Chapter 228. Lu Huarong was a little regretful. He thought that with Bai Jianmu's protection, this problem would be easily solved. Who would have thought that so many changes would take place in this matter? What he didn't expect the most was the things that happened today. First, third senior Zhang Liji asked the master to gather everyone to investigate the missing blueprint. He wanted to prove that Yi Xian wasn't the one who stole the blueprint. However, Bai Jianmu insisted that Yi Xian was the one who stole the blueprint. After several battles, he finally gained the upper hand and saw some light at the end of the tunnel. However, what Lu Huarong didn't expect was what happened in third senior Zhang's bedroom. Bai Jianmu was the one who stole the blueprint. When Bai Jianmu took out the bronze box and Lu Huarong saw it, he immediately understood everything. Then, he was frightened by the development of the matter and broke out in a cold sweat. He didn't expect Bai Jianmu to be the one who did it. In that case, Yi Xian, who was locked up in the Repentance Pavilion, was really wronged. What third senior brother Zhang Liji had said was true. He was speaking from the bottom of his heart. Lu Huarong wasn't a bad person. He also thought that Yi Xian wasn't the one who stole the blueprint. However, he didn't expect Bai Jianmu to be the one who stole the blueprint. More importantly, after Bai Jianmu stole the blueprint, he framed Yi Xian and asked the master to lock Yi Xian up in the Repentance Pavilion. Lu Huarong naturally knew what kind of place the Repentance Pavilion was. After knowing that Bai Jianmu was the one who stole the blueprint, Lu Huarong was suddenly enlightened. Back then, it wasn't Bai Jianmu who accused Yi Xian of stealing the blueprint. However, after knowing who the real thief was, Lu Huarong remembered all the things that happened when he accused Yi Xian of stealing the blueprint. Although it wasn't Bai Jianmu who accused Yi Xian of stealing the blueprint, Bai Jianmu led everyone step by step and led everyone to think that Yi Xian was the one who stole the blueprint. In the end, everyone said that Yi Xian was the one who stole the blueprint. Now, Lu Huarong was truly afraid. He didn't expect Bai Jianmu to hide his strength so deeply. Not only did he steal the blueprint, he even framed Yi Xian as the culprit. He even made everyone think that Yi Xian was the real culprit. On the day that Yi Xian was identified, Bai Jianmu repeatedly emphasized that no one knew where the blueprints were kept. But he did not say who knew where the blueprints were kept because everyone knew who did. Yi Xian knew the location of the blueprint. This was no longer a secret in the South County branch. It was also for this reason that Sun Xinjing, who had always trusted Yi Xian, locked Yi Xian in the Penitence Pavilion. After walking out of third senior brother's bedroom, Lu Huarong had been in a state of anxiety because he finally found out who was the one who stole the blueprint. Most importantly, he didn't dare to say it out loud because he was already Bai Jianmu's accomplice. One reason was that he had become Bai Jianmu's accomplice. The other reason was that Lu Huarong was afraid. Bai Jianmu's martial arts skills were not a secret in the South County branch. Lu Huarong was just a disciple of an ordinary family and did not know martial arts. It was precisely because of this reason that he remained silent every day and did not dare to cause any trouble. He was afraid that he would bring trouble. Lu Huarong was certain that if Bai Jianmu wanted to deal with him, it would be a piece of cake. He would probably only need to use one finger. In third senior brother's living room, when Bai Jianmu told him about this matter, although his face was full of smiles, Lu Huarong knew that if he did not agree at that time, Bai Jianmu would immediately fall out with him and attack him. That was because he knew his secret. In order to keep this secret, Bai Jianmu would definitely attack him. Lu Huarong was certain of this. Lu Huarong also knew why Bai Jianmu did this. Bai Jianmu wanted to be the leader of the South County branch. In order to become the leader of the South County branch, he secretly observed his master's movements and searched for the location where his master placed the blueprint. In the end, he finally succeeded in revealing the blueprint. Bai Jianmu dared to do such a big thing. Bai Jianmu would definitely not be soft-hearted when dealing with him. Thinking of this, Lu Huarong felt a chill in his heart. He really regretted getting involved in this matter. If he hadn't gotten involved, he wouldn't have had anything to do with it. However, it was too late to say anything now. If he dared to withdraw now, Lu Huarong believed that Bai Jianmu would definitely make him unable to speak for his own safety. Thinking of his family, Lu Huarong could only sigh secretly. His family situation was not good. They were just ordinary farmers. Lu Huarong had liked to think about these things since he was young. In addition, he was somewhat talented in this aspect. The things he made were quite decent. Lu Huarong's parents saw that he had talent in this aspect, so they went up the mountain to beg Sun Xinjing. They wanted Sun Xinjing to accept them as his disciple. However, it was not so simple for Sun Xinjing to accept Lu Huarong as his disciple. Lu Huarong's parents could not even see Sun Xinjing's face. For their son, they knelt outside the entrance of the South County branch for 3 days. Sun Xinjing saw that Lu Huarong's parents were pitiful and that Lu Huarong did have some talent, so he made an exception and accepted him as his disciple. Although Sun Xinjing had accepted Lu Huarong as his disciple, his life was not going well. Among the disciples of their generation, the most talented were naturally Yi Xian and Bai Jianmu. In order not to embarrass the South County branch, every time there was a large-scale construction mission, Yi Xian or Bai Jianmu would be sent. Lu Huarong would only build some simple buildings. In this way, he naturally couldn't earn much money. Although most of the money he earned was sent home, it wasn't much money. Although it could improve the living conditions of his family, it couldn't change the nature of his family. Farmers naturally had to plant crops. Lu Huarong was the boss of the family. If it was an ordinary family, he would be the main force. However, he went out to learn skills, so he naturally could not help the family. The family lacked labor, and his parents were not in good health. Lu Huarong also had a sister who could not be of much use. In this way, the Lu family's life was actually supported by the little money that Lu Huarong sent back. If Lu Huarong was finished, the Lu family would be finished. Although he now knew that Yi Xian was wronged, he could only apologize. Even if Yi Xian was punished because of this, at most, he would repay him in the future. The door of the hall was tightly shut. Lu Huarong could not hear anything from inside the room. He could only guess what they were talking about. At the same time, he kept recalling the countermeasures that Bai Jianmu and he had discussed in third senior brother's living room. After thinking about it again and again, Lu Huarong was completely relieved and prepared to deal with the next question. Chapter 229. Bai Jianmu found it strange that Zhang Meng didn't ask him any other questions. He didn't know what Zhang Meng was thinking. Soon, Lu Huarong was brought in. Seeing Lu Huarong in front of him, Bai Jianmu gave him a subtle wink and finally nodded, indicating that there was no problem. Seeing Bai Jianmu's wink, Lu Huarong was relieved. Then, he turned to Sun Xinjing and said, "Master, I'm back." Sun Xinjing nodded and turned to Zhang Meng. "Prince Zhang, if you have any questions, ask away." After hearing Sun Xinjing's words, Zhang Meng looked at Lu Huarong and said lightly, "Lu Huarong, tell me how you found the bronze box." Hearing this, Lu Huarong nodded. Only then did he tell Bai Jianmu the story that he and Bai Jianmu had discussed beforehand. After saying that, Lu Huarong turned to look at Bai Jianmu. After hearing Lu Huarong's story, Sun Xinjing frowned and asked, "Lu Huarong, is everything you said true?" After hearing Sun Xinjing's question, Lu Huarong's face could not help but change. He hurriedly cupped his fists and said, "Master, what disciple said is true. That bronze box was indeed found under third senior brother's bed." This time, before Sun Xinjing could speak, Zhang Leji pointed at Lu Huarong and said angrily, "Lu Huarong, I didn't expect you to be this kind of person. Tell me, how many benefits did Bai Jianmu give you to talk nonsense here?" Seeing that Zhang Leji started shouting without his permission, Sun Xinjing couldn't help but slam the table and say angrily, "Zhang Leji, that's enough. Now that the evidence is conclusive, what else do you have to say? Hurry up and take out the blueprint." At this point, Sun Xinjing thought of the blueprint again. He paused for a moment before he said slowly, "Zhang Leji, as long as you hand over the blueprint, I won't punish you severely." When Sun Xinjing said this, although he was very angry, he could only say so. This blueprint was too important. If something were to happen and it was leaked to the outside world, then his master's efforts for half his life would be wasted. As for him, how could he face his master again? For the sake of that blueprint, he was willing to let Zhang Leji off the hook and not pursue his crimes. When Zhang Leji heard his master's words, his face immediately turned pale. He already understood that his master was certain that he was the one who stole the blueprint. Zhang Leji could no longer hold it in when he thought about how he would have to bear this crime in the future. He hurriedly knelt on the ground and sobbed. "Master, your disciple really didn't steal the blueprint. Someone must have wanted to frame your disciple. That's why they found the bronze box in my room. Disciple can swear to the heavens that if disciple was the one who stole the blueprints, I am willing to suffer." Unexpectedly, before he could finish his words, he was interrupted by Jianmu's cold laughter. "Third senior brother, I think you shouldn't quibble anymore. We found this bronze box in your room. Isn't that conclusive evidence? At this point, you still refuse to admit your mistake. What are your intentions? Master has taught you so painstakingly for so many years, but in return, you betrayed him. Third senior brother, are you worthy of Master?" Speaking of this, Bai Jianmu's tone paused. He quickly walked to Zhang Leji's side and said in a low voice, "Third senior brother, I think you should admit it. Master has already said that as long as you take out the blueprint, he won't punish you severely." Speaking of this, Bai Jianmu patted Zhang Leji's shoulder and continued, "Third senior brother, don't worry. We will speak up for you. We definitely won't let you be severely punished." As Bai Jianmu spoke, he began to put more force on Zhang Leji's shoulder. Hearing Bai Jianmu's words and feeling the increasing force on his hand, Zhang Leji felt that his heart was about to explode from anger. By now, Zhang Leji was somewhat clear. Bai Jianmu was definitely the one who stole the blueprint. At the very least, he had to be the one who stole the blueprint. However, he was the one who stole the blueprint, but he wanted him to admit it. Thinking of this, Zhang Leji wanted to break free from Bai Jianmu's hand. However, Bai Jianmu's hand was getting stronger and stronger. Not only was he unable to break free, but he was also being pressed down by this force to the point where he could barely stand. Zhang Leji looked at Bai Jianmu and suddenly said loudly, "Bai Jianmu, don't think that others don't know that you stole the blueprint. After stealing it, not only did you refuse to admit it, you even tried to frame me. Bai Jianmu, I've seen through you. You're an ungrateful, shameless villain." Speaking of this, Zhang Leji couldn't continue because Bai Jianmu's eyes had turned cold and the force on his hand was getting stronger and stronger. Under this force, Zhang Leji couldn't bear it anymore and his body gradually bent down. Zhang Leji didn't want to end up like this, but he knew that if he continued to bear it, his bones would probably be crushed. The force on Bai Jianmu's hand was like a huge rock pressing down on Zhang Liji's body, as if it was going to crush him. Zhang Liji only felt more and more cold sweat on his forehead, and Bai Jianmu's hand seemed to be getting stronger and stronger. Just when Zhang Liji couldn't bear the force and was about to fall to the ground, suddenly, Zhang Meng's voice came from the side. Bai Jianmu, I haven't finished speaking. Why are you in such a hurry to make a move? Could it be that you stole the blueprint? Is that why you're in such a hurry to make a move and frame Zhang Liji for it? Bai Jianmu really wanted to press Zhang Liji to the ground and teach him a lesson. He wanted Zhang Liji to admit that he stole the blueprint as soon as possible, and this matter would be over. However, after hearing Zhang Meng's words, he realized that he was a little too impatient. If he did that, his master might suspect him. Thinking of this, Bai Jianmu hurriedly let go of his hand and took a step back. Then, he turned to son Xinjing and cupped his fist. Master, now that the evidence is conclusive, the most important thing now is to find the blueprint as soon as possible. That's why I use a little trick to make third senior brother take out the blueprint as soon as possible and understand what's on your mind. After hearing Bai Jianmu's words, son Xinjing nodded and sighed in his heart. The bronze box was found in Zhang Liji's room. Even Zhang Liji himself couldn't deny this point. Although Zhang Liji said that Bai Jianmu framed him, Bai Jianmu wasn't the only one who went to search Zhang Liji's room. Lu Huarong was there too. Lu Huarong also testified for Bai Jianmu that the bronze box was indeed found in Zhang Liji's room. This proved that Bai Jianmu wasn't lying. This meant that Bai Jianmu wasn't lying, and he really found the bronze box in Zhang Liji's room. Chapter 230. Although son Xinjing believed that Bai Jianmu didn't lie, he was still a little unhappy that Bai Jianmu played tricks on Zhang Liji in front of him. Son Xinjing thought for a while and didn't answer Bai Jianmu's question. He turned to look at Zhang Meng and asked, Prince Zhang, do you have any other questions? Zhang Meng was speechless after listening to son Xinjing's words. He hadn't even started to ask, but these guys had already started to make wild guesses. They were already sure that Zhang Liji was the one who stole the blueprint. Although the bronze box was indeed found in Zhang Liji's room, it was too easy to frame him for such a thing. Although Lu Huarong was a witness, it was possible that Lu Huarong was a fake witness. If Lu Huarong was a fake witness, wouldn't it mean that Zhang Liji was wronged? Moreover, this Bai Jianmu kept pointing out that Zhang Liji was the one who stole the blueprint. He even wanted to use some tricks on Zhang Liji to make Zhang Liji admit that he stole the blueprint. Most importantly, Bai Jianmu secretly played tricks on Zhang Liji. Just now, Zhang Meng saw clearly that Bai Jianmu played tricks on Zhang Liji. Seeing that Zhang Liji couldn't resist it anymore, he stopped him. To be honest, Zhang Meng did not know who had stolen the blueprints. However, he felt that it was better not to use those little tricks before he had a full confirmation. Zhang Meng also realized that if he didn't stop Bai Jianmu, Zhang Liji might really admit that he was the one who stole the blueprint. Now, what he needed to do was naturally to find out who was the liar. Was it Bai Jianmu who used the bronze box to frame Zhang Liji, or was it Zhang Liji who refused to admit it? As long as this matter was investigated clearly, the truth would naturally surface. If he wanted to find out who was the liar, the most important link was Lu Huarong. Thinking of this, Zhang Meng waved his hand at Bai Jianmu and said, before the problem is investigated clearly, don't do anything to Zhang Liji anymore. Otherwise, don't blame me for not reminding you. After hearing Zhang Meng's words, Bai Jianmu's heart suddenly trembled. He was confident in his martial arts skills and didn't put Zhang Meng in his eyes. Moreover, Zhang Meng was just an outsider. What reason did he have to pretend to be innocent here? At this moment, hearing Zhang Meng's words, he sneered and said sternly, Prince Zhang, now that the evidence is, what else do you want to ask? Don't you know how important this blueprint is very important to our South County branch? Zhang Meng's is right. Of Zhang's right. Even if I used to Zhang's is right. After hearing Bai Jianmu's words, Zhang Meng turned his head and looked at Bai Jianmu. After a long while, he said slowly, "Do you think Zhang Liji stole the blueprint?" Hearing this, Bai Jianmu sneered and replied, "Of course." The bronze box with the blueprint was found in his room. How could it be fake? Zhang Ming shook his head, "But you might be lying. That bronze box originally belonged to you. You only need to go to Zhang Liji's room and take out the bronze box. This way, you can naturally frame Zhang Liji. Could it be that there's no such possibility?" Hearing Zhang Ming's words, Bai Jianmu did not panic. He even clapped his hands and said with a sneer, "Prince Zhang, your imagination is quite rich, but unfortunately, it's all imagination." At this point, Bai Jianmu paused. Then, he pointed at Lu Huarong and said with a laugh, "Unfortunately, I have a witness. Junior brother Lu can testify for me that this bronze box was found in third senior brother's room." After hearing Bai Jianmu's words, Zhang Ming nodded. "Bai Jianmu, this can't prove that the bronze box doesn't belong to you, because Lu Huarong can also collude with you to frame Zhang Liji." Bai Jianmu's expression changed when he heard this. He turned his head to look at Zhang Ming. A cold light flashed in his eyes as he said in a cold tone, "Prince Zhang, you can eat whatever you want, but you can't speak whatever you want. You said that junior brother Lu and I are colluding. What evidence do you have to prove that we are colluding? If you can't prove it, can I think that you are framing me?" At this point, Bai Jianmu's eyes became even colder. He stared at Zhang Ming and said coldly, "Prince Zhang, why do you want to frame me so much?" At this point, Bai Jianmu's eyes suddenly lit up. He turned around and cupped his fists at Sun Xinjing. "Master, I have a question. I don't know if I should ask it." Sun Xinjing frowned when he heard this. He subconsciously glanced at Zhang Ming and said slowly, "If you have anything to say, just say it." After hearing Sun Xinjing's words, Bai Jianmu pointed at Zhang Ming and sneered. "Master, the question in my heart is, after third senior brother stole the blueprint, how should he bring it out? I can't figure out this question. During this period of time, Master has strictly forbidden anyone from leaving the South County branch. Then, how should third senior brother take the blueprint he stole out? Now, I've finally figured it out." After hearing Bai Jianmu's words, Sun Xinjing's eyes suddenly narrowed and he asked, "Bai Jianmu, what exactly have you figured out? Tell me quickly." Hearing his master's question, a cold smile appeared on the corners of Bai Jianmu's mouth. "Master, if I'm not wrong, this young Master Zhang by your side should be third senior brother's accomplice. Yi Xian and third senior brother stole the blueprint, but they can't leave the South County branch. And this young Master Zhang was here to receive them and bring the blueprint out while he was at it. As long as young Master Zhang takes the blueprint out, there will be no evidence. Even if we know that Yi Xian and Zhang Liji stole the blueprint, if we can't find the blueprint, we can't be sure that they are the real thieves." At this point, Bai Jianmu paused. He bowed to Sun Xinjing and cupped his fist before continuing. "Master, it's fortunate that we came early. Otherwise, if we were half a day late, I'm afraid that the blueprint would have been taken out of the South County branch by Prince Zhang. At that time, not only would we not be able to find the blueprint, but this blueprint would also be leaked out. It would no longer be a secret of our Tianji sect." After hearing Bai Jianmu's words, Sun Xinjing's expression could not help but change. If things were really as Bai Jianmu said, then it would be terrible. Bai Jianmu was right. If he did not suggest to search Zhang Ming's room today, then after Zhang Ming took the blueprint out, it would be impossible to find the person who stole the blueprint. Sun Xinjing knew that if they could not find the blueprint, they would not be able to find the person who stole the blueprint. Chapter 231. After listening to Bai Jianmu's words, Zhang Ming was full of admiration for him. This Bai Jianmu was simply too good at talking. Not only did he know how to talk, but he also knew how to frame people. He had kindly come to help them, but in the end, Bai Jianmu turned around and said that he was an accomplice. Zhang Ming felt that this Bai Jianmu was definitely a talent. It was just that Zhang Ming didn't like this kind of talent. Looking at Sun Xinjing's suspicious gaze, Zhang Ming laughed. "Branch leader's son, are you suspecting me? Are you suspecting that I came here today to bring the blueprint out?" After hearing Zhang Ming's question, Sun Xinjing was a little embarrassed. Zhang Ming came to help him, but after listening to Bai Jianmu's words, he somewhat believed Bai Jianmu's words. This made him feel a little embarrassed. However, for the blueprint, Sun Xinjing could suspect anyone. Even Zhang Ming was no exception. Although it was a little inappropriate to suspect Zhang Ming for no reason, Sun Xinjing couldn't care less before he found the blueprint. After hearing Zhang Ming's question, although he only thought for a moment, he slowly said, "Prince Zhang, do you think Bai Jianmu's words make sense? Is there such a possibility?" After hearing Sun Xinjing's question, Zhang Ming knew that this old man threw the question to him again and wanted him to explain. However, Zhang Ming wasn't interested in Sun Xinjing's suggestion. This was because although the blueprint was precious, it didn't mean anything to him. Even if he wanted it, he would make Sun Xinjing give it to him willingly. Only then would he accept the blueprint. If he used the method of stealing, Zhang Ming would definitely not agree to it. Thinking of this, Zhang Ming turned to look at Sun Xinjing and asked with a smile, "Branch Leader's son, how would you like to hear my explanation?" After listening to Zhang Ming's question, he was a little speechless in his heart. Just now, he had already given Zhang Ming some advice. He wanted Zhang Ming to explain whether this matter had anything to do with him. But this Prince Zhang didn't know what to do. He actually asked me how I should explain it. This is really... Sun Xinjing thought for a moment, then said seriously, "Prince Zhang, please explain to me whether Bai Jianmu's words are true or not." This time, before Zhang Ming could answer, Bai Jianmu had already said, "Yes, Prince Zhang, please explain why you came at such a coincidence. Why did you come after our sect lost the blueprint? What's the reason?" Hearing Bai Jianmu speak so impolitely, although he didn't say it explicitly, everyone understood the meaning behind his words. Zhang Xiaoming, who was at the side, understood the meaning behind Bai Jianmu's words. He quickly pushed Zhang Ming, then lowered his voice and said, "Brother Ming, don't be angry. We came this time to ask them to build an auction house for us. Don't let your emotions affect your decisions and delay the important matter." After listening to Zhang Xiaoming's reminder, Zhang Ming nodded. To be honest, he really didn't want to make a move on Bai Jianmu. Although Tianji's sect wasn't the biggest sect, it was still considered famous. Tianji's sect had connections with almost every sect because every sect had many treasures. And these treasures were naturally the safest to put in a secret room. To build the safest secret room, they naturally had to find Tianji's sect. Zhang Ming knew that although he could destroy Tianji's sect with a flick of his finger, doing so wouldn't benefit him at all. Zhang Ming naturally wouldn't do something that didn't benefit him. Since he couldn't use force, he could only solve this blueprint theft case. Then, the truth would naturally come to light. Thinking of this, Zhang Ming ignored Bai Jianmu's question. Instead, he looked at Sun Xinjing and asked with a smile, "Branch Leader's son, Bai Jianmu said that I have connections with Zhang Leji. I don't want to say anything about this. What I want to say now is who exactly this bronze box belongs to. If this bronze box is proven not to belong to Zhang Leji, then does that mean that this matter has nothing to do with me?" After listening to Zhang Ming's words, Sun Xinjing quickly nodded. Then he asked with some doubt, "Prince Zhang, do you think that this bronze box belongs to Bai Jianmu?" When Zhang Ming heard Sun Xinjing's question, he shook his head. "I can't say for sure. We can only find out who this bronze box belongs to after questioning them." At this point, Zhang Ming paused. He didn't wait for Sun Xinjing to answer and continued speaking. "Branch Leader's son, in that case, I'll start the questioning." This time, before Sun Xinjing could answer, Bai Jianmu spoke first. "Master, since Prince Zhang is a suspect, what right does he have to question us?" "Master, please reconsider. If Prince Zhang has connections with Zhang Leji, then his questioning will definitely be disadvantageous to me. In the end, I might be framed by him." Sun Xinjing originally wanted to agree to Zhang Ming's request, but at this moment, after listening to Bai Jianmu's words, he was a little hesitant. Bai Jianmu's words were very reasonable. If Zhang Ming and Zhang Leji were in cahoots, then when he questioned them, he would definitely protect Zhang Leji and frame Bai Jianmu for this matter. For something like this, no matter who it was, they would do the same. According to Bai Jianmu's words, it was indeed a little inappropriate for Zhang Meng to be the one to question them. Thinking of this, Sun Xinjing turned to look at Zhang Meng and said apologetically, Prince Zhang, it is indeed a little inappropriate for you to be the one to question them. I think it's better to forget about it. After listening to Sun Xinjing's answer, Zhang Meng was speechless. He felt that Sun Xinjing, as the branch leader, was simply being led by the nose by Bai Jianmu. He had no idea what to do. Zhang Meng thought for a moment before asking, Branch leader Sun, since you don't want me to question them, I would like to ask, how do you want to deal with this matter? After listening to Zhang Meng's question, Sun Xinjing was stunned. To be honest, he really hadn't thought about how to deal with this matter. Now, all the evidence pointed to Zhang Leji. If Zhang Meng hadn't said anything just now, Zhang Leji would probably have been sent to the Hall of Regret. In other words, if Zhang Meng hadn't come forward, everyone would definitely have believed that Zhang Leji was the one who stole the blueprint. In other words, it was Yi Xian who stole the blueprint and placed it in Zhang Leji's possession. Seeing that Sun Xinjing didn't answer, Zhang Meng asked again, Branch leader Sun, if I'm not wrong, and if I didn't say anything, I'm afraid that you would have already believed that Zhang Leji stole the blueprint, right? After hearing Zhang Meng's question, Sun Xinjing hesitated for a moment. After a moment, he nodded. Yes, the bronze box with the blueprint was found in his room. No one can deny this. Judging from this, it shouldn't be too much to say that Zhang Leji stole the blueprint. Hearing this, Zhang Meng nodded. Indeed, no one denies the existence of the bronze box. Chapter 232. After hearing Zhang Meng's answer, Sun Xinjing was slightly relieved. Just as he was about to speak, he heard Zhang Meng speak again. Branch leader Sun, is this how you saw the case? Could it be that you also solved Yi Xian's case this way? After hearing Zhang Meng's question, Sun Xinjing was stunned. He turned to look at Zhang Meng and asked doubtfully, Prince Zhang, is there something wrong with this? Zhang Meng nodded. It's indeed wrong. Without solid evidence, how can you determine who stole the blueprint? Don't tell me that you believe some groundless rumors. If you saw the case this way, it would be too easy. Have you ever thought about what would happen if Yi Xian or Zhang Leji were wronged? This time, without waiting for Sun Xinjing to answer, Bai Jianmu spoke again. Prince Zhang, this is our sect's secret. Don't forget that you're still a suspect. Under such circumstances, you're still inquiring about our sect's matters. Could it be that you have some ulterior motive? After hearing Bai Jianmu's words, Zhang Meng turned to look at him and asked with a smile, Bai Jianmu, do you think I'm a suspect just because you say so? Tell me your evidence and I'll admit to it. At this point, Zhang Meng paused before continuing, Otherwise, I hope you won't say such things again. Bai Jianmu was stunned when he heard this. Then he laughed. He could tell that the young man in front of him was threatening him. However, would he, Bai Jianmu, be afraid of this kind of threat? Impossible. Thinking of this, Bai Jianmu's gaze changed. He looked at Zhang Meng with a cold glint in his eyes. Prince Zhang, you can't say that. Then why don't you explain yourself? Why are you so coincidental to come to our sect at this time? At this point, Bai Jianmu turned to Sun Xinjing and cupped his fist before continuing. Master, Prince Zhang came to our sect and didn't look for anyone but Yi Xian and Zhang Leji. Don't you think there's something wrong with this? At this moment, Sun Xinjing had no idea what to do after hearing everyone's discussion. He wasn't someone who had much of a mind of his own to begin with. Now that he had encountered such a situation, his mind was naturally in a mess. After hearing Bai Jianmu's words, Sun Xinjing turned to Zhang Meng and asked, Prince Zhang, do you have any explanation for this? Zhang Meng shook his head. What's there to explain? Do I have to get Bai Jianmu's permission to build something? I can come whenever I want. It doesn't seem like anyone can control me. After hearing Zhang Meng's words, Bai Jianmu sneered. Master, since Prince Zhang can't give a reason, I think it's inappropriate for him to ask about this matter. Seeing the hesitation on Sun Xinjing's face, Zhang Meng thought for a moment before saying, Branch leader Sun, you don't have to hesitate. I can guarantee that I'm not here to take the blueprint. After listening to Zhang Meng's words, Bai Jianmu sneered again. Prince Zhang, in fact, the most useless thing is to make a promise. We won't believe your promise unless you can show us real evidence. Otherwise, no matter how much you say, we won't believe you. Speaking of this, Bai Jianmu looked around again and asked loudly, "Don't you think so? Prince Zhang only made a promise, but there's no real evidence. Why should we believe him?" After saying this, Bai Jianmu winked at Tang Jinan again, hinting him to speak quickly. After seeing Bai Jianmu's eyes, Tang Jinan was about to speak when he suddenly remembered what happened just now. He hesitated and swallowed the words he wanted to say. After waiting for a while, Bai Jianmu saw that Tang Jinan didn't speak. He couldn't help but glare at him fiercely. Then he turned his gaze to Lu Huarong and asked with a smile, "Junior brother Lu, am I right?" After hearing Bai Jianmu's words, Lu Huarong didn't dare to be negligent. He hurriedly stepped forward and said loudly, "Senior brother Bai is right. Prince Zhang is involved in this matter. If we let him come and ask, it will be unfair. Master, please reconsider." At this moment, after being glared at by Bai Jianmu, Tang Jinan also reacted. After Lu Huarong finished speaking, he hurriedly stepped forward and cupped his fists. "Master, it's true. Prince Zhang is a suspect. If we let him come and ask, it will be inappropriate. What's more, if we let an outsider ask about our sex matters, it will be bad for our reputation if word gets out." After hearing Lu Huarong's words, Sun Xinjing didn't feel anything. However, after hearing Tang Jinan's words, Sun Xinjing's heart suddenly moved. Tang Jinan was right. If they let an outsider ask about Tianji's sex matters and word got out, it would definitely be bad for their reputation. For this kind of theft by their own sex disciples, they should have kept it a secret and not let outsiders know. This was the right thing to do. Now that they let an outsider ask about it, it was indeed a little strange. Although these words made sense, Sun Xinjing still had some hesitation in his heart. The matter of the blueprint had not been resolved yet. If they didn't find it quickly, it would be too late for regrets once the blueprint got out. At that time, not only would they lose face, but their master's efforts would all go to waste. However, what should he choose? Should he let Zhang Meng ask about it, or should he slowly search for it himself? Although the bronze box was found in Zhang Leji's room, Sun Xinjing could already tell that Zhang Leji didn't intend to take out the blueprint. If Zhang Leji was also locked up in the Repentance Pavilion, what should he do if he still didn't say anything? The matter of the blueprint couldn't be delayed any longer. These few days, Sun Xinjing couldn't eat or sleep well, worrying about the blueprint. However, despite his worries, he still couldn't find the blueprint. At this thought, Sun Xinjing glanced at everyone in the hall, and finally, his gaze stopped on Zhang Meng. He had already made up his mind. Even if Zhang Meng was suspicious, he had to let him try. At this thought, Sun Xinjing looked at Zhang Meng and said slowly, "Prince Zhang, I've decided to let you ask about it." At this point, Sun Xinjing's tone paused. He suddenly sighed and continued in a low voice, "Prince Zhang, I hope you won't disappoint me." As soon as Sun Xinjing's voice fell, everyone present was stunned. Seeing Sun Xinjing's hesitant look, Zhang Meng thought that he wouldn't let him ask. As long as Sun Xinjing didn't let him ask, Zhang Meng didn't want to care about this matter anymore. After all, this was the matter of the South County branch, and it had nothing to do with him. If he forced himself to ask, even if he found the person who stole the blueprint, Sun Xinjing wouldn't be satisfied, and it wouldn't do him any good. Chapter 233. When Bai Jianmu heard Sun Xinjing's reply, his face turned pale with fright. Just now, when he saw Sun Xinjing's expression, he thought that he would agree to his request. However, he didn't expect the situation to take a turn for the worse. Sun Xinjing actually agreed to ask Zhang Meng about this matter. Seeing the situation develop like this, Bai Jianmu was only stunned for a moment before he hurriedly said loudly, "Master, you can't do this. If Prince Zhang and Zhang Leji are in cahoots, then he will definitely harm me. At that time, I won't be able to defend myself. After hearing Bai Jianmu's words, Sun Xinjing's heart became lively again. However, in the blink of an eye, he made up his mind again. After so long, the blueprint still hadn't been found. If he didn't think of a way and an accident happened, that would be the worst thing that could happen. Although the situation that Bai Jianmu mentioned could happen, Sun Xinjing felt that he was sitting at the side. If such a situation really happened, he would definitely correct it in time. Therefore, Sun Xinjing made up his mind again. He turned his head to look at Zhang Meng and nodded slightly. Zhang Meng could start now. Seeing that Sun Xinjing trusted him, Zhang Meng felt a little grateful. Although this old man didn't have any ideas, he was quite good at reading people. Thinking of this, Zhang Meng looked at Sun Xinjing and said in a low voice, "Branch leader's son, don't worry. I will definitely help you find the blueprint." After saying this, Zhang Meng turned his head to look at Bai Jianmu and said with a smile, "Bai Jianmu, since your master has agreed to let me ask about it, you should retreat outside the door. Remember, before I ask you, you can't say anything or come in to talk." After saying this, Zhang Meng waved his hand towards Bai Jianmu. "Well, you can leave now." After hearing Zhang Meng's words, Bai Jianmu's expression changed, but it soon returned to normal. He snorted and turned to look at his master. After seeing that Sun Xinjing had nothing else to say, he walked out of the door. Bai Jianmu closed the door and stood with his back against the room. Bai Jianmu sneered when he felt the wall behind him. This Prince Zhang was still too young. With his martial arts, even if he stood outside the door, he could easily hear the conversation inside. This was something that Prince Zhang would never have thought of. Moreover, he had already made it very clear to Lu Huarong. If someone asked, what should he say? They didn't leave the room until Lu Huarong had memorized everything. Therefore, Bai Jianmu wasn't worried about Zhang Meng's question. What he needed to worry about was that Zhang Meng definitely had an ulterior motive. After seeing Bai Jianmu walk out of the room, he turned to look at Lu Huarong. After a while, he suddenly asked, "Lu Huarong, let me ask you, where did Bai Jianmu find this bronze box?" After hearing Zhang Meng's question, Lu Huarong's heart, which had been hanging in the air, was slightly relieved. He immediately answered, "He took it out from under third senior brother's bed." Zhang Meng nodded. "Is that so? Then let me ask you, did you take out the bronze box, or did Bai Jianmu take it out personally?" After hearing Zhang Meng's questions, Lu Huarong was completely relieved. The two of them had already discussed these questions and gave the best testimony before leaving the room. It was third senior brother who took out the bronze box. After hearing Lu Huarong's answer, Zhang Meng nodded again and asked, "When Bai Jianmu took out the bronze box, what were you doing?" After hearing Zhang Meng's question, Lu Huarong's face couldn't help but change, because the two of them really didn't talk about this question. At that time, when they were in the room, they were afraid that the two's testimony would be different, so they compared their testimony in detail. In order to be accurate, the position of the box and even the angle of the box, they were very detailed. However, they didn't say what Lu Huarong was doing when Bai Jianmu took out the bronze box. What was he doing? Lu Huarong was a little nervous. For a moment, he actually couldn't speak. Seeing that Lu Huarong didn't answer, Zhang Meng raised his voice a little and asked, "Lu Huarong, weren't you in the room at that time?" After hearing this, Lu Huarong hurriedly waved his hand and said, No, I was in the room." Zhang Meng said, "Since you were in the room, why didn't you answer my question?" After hearing Zhang Meng's question, Lu Huarong gritted his teeth and said, "At that time, I was standing behind Senior Bai." After hearing Lu Huarong's answer, Zhang Meng nodded. "Oh, so you were behind him. Then let me ask you, were you behind Bai Jianmu on the left or the right?" After hearing Zhang Meng's question, Lu Huarong felt a little bad. But now, he could only force a smile and said, "I was on the left of Senior Bai." After hearing this, Zhang Meng nodded again. "So, you were behind Bai Jianmu on the left. This should be correct, right?" After hearing Zhang Meng's question, Lu Huarong's forehead broke out in cold sweat, and he replied, "Yes." After hearing Lu Huarong's answer, Zhang Meng smiled and waved his hand at Lu Huarong. "Okay, you stand aside first." Speaking of this, Zhang Meng paused for a moment, then continued, "Remember, when I ask Bai Jianmu later, you must not speak. Otherwise, you will be the person who stole the blueprint. Speaking of this, Zhang Ming shouted at the door again. Bai Jianmu, I'm done asking. You can come in. Bai Jianmu, who was standing outside the door, was a little confused after hearing Zhang Ming's shout. He had been standing outside the door, listening carefully, but he heard nothing. He even suspected that there was no one in the room. Everyone had left the room. After hearing Zhang Ming's shout, although Bai Jianmu didn't hear anything, he could only return to the room. Seeing that Bai Jianmu was already in front of him, Zhang Ming turned his head and said to Lu Huarong, Lu Huarong, turn your back to Bai Jianmu. After hearing Zhang Ming's words, Lu Huarong knew that things were not good. He glanced at his master subconsciously and asked in a low voice, Master. Before he could finish his words, Sun Xinjing waved his hand and interrupted him. Do as Prince Zhang says. Sun Xinjing naturally knew what Zhang Ming wanted to do. If Zhang Ming asked Bai Jianmu a question and Lu Huarong winked at Bai Jianmu or hinted something, then this question would be meaningless. After hearing Sun Xinjing's words, Lu Huarong turned his back to Bai Jianmu helplessly. The moment he turned around, Lu Huarong felt a chill in his heart. At the same time, the remorse that had been suppressed spread again, causing him to shiver uncontrollably. If Bai Jianmu's answer didn't match his, then this farce about the bronze box would come to an end. Chapter 234. After Lu Huarong turned around, Zhang Ming turned to look at Bai Jianmu and asked calmly, Bai Jianmu, you said that the bronze box was found in Zhang Leji's room, right? Bai Jianmu nodded. Yes. Zhang Ming asked again, Bai Jianmu, let me ask you, where was the bronze box found in Zhang Leji's room? After listening to Zhang Ming's question, Bai Jianmu became a little impatient and answered loudly, Didn't I just say that it was found under third senior brother's bed? Zhang Ming nodded. Yes, it was found under Zhang Leji's bed. Let me ask you, who found the bronze box? Bai Jianmu replied, I found the bronze box when I was searching under the bed. Zhang Ming nodded again and asked, Bai Jianmu, who took the bronze box out from under the bed? After listening to Zhang Ming's question, Bai Jianmu replied impatiently, It was me. When I was searching under the bed, I found a bronze box and took it out. Zhang Ming asked, Then, where was the bronze box under the bed when you found it? Hearing Zhang Ming's question, Bai Jianmu couldn't help but sneer in his heart. Regarding the location of the bronze box, he had already discussed it clearly with Lu Huarong. Therefore, after hearing Zhang Ming's question, he answered without hesitation, I found it on the left side under the bed. Zhang Ming asked, At that time, was the bronze box placed upright or upside down? Bai Jianmu had already thought of these questions that Zhang Ming asked. He didn't even think about it, and answered, At that time, the bronze box was placed upright. Zhang Ming nodded and asked again, Then let me ask you, when you were looking for the bronze box, what was Lu Huarong doing? After hearing this question, Bai Jianmu was stunned for a moment. Then, he pretended to be a little annoyed and answered, At that time, when I was under the bed, how could I know what junior brother Lu was doing? Zhang Ming nodded. Bai Jianmu, you're right. When you were under the bed, you really didn't know what Lu Huarong was doing, because you couldn't see what he was doing either? At this point, Zhang Ming paused for a moment before continuing to ask, Since you couldn't see where Lu Huarong was when you were searching under the bed, then let me ask you, when you came out from under the bed, was Lu Huarong on the left or right opposite the bed? After hearing Zhang Ming's question, Bai Jianmu was stunned. Zhang Ming's question. As time was tight, the two of them really didn't study this question. More importantly, Bai Jianmu didn't expect Zhang Ming to come. If Zhang Ming didn't come, Bai Jianmu was sure that Sun Xinjing would never think of asking this question. As long as he had a witness, Bai Jianmu was sure that Sun Xinjing would definitely believe his words. However, he didn't expect that the person who asked this question was Zhang Ming. The thing that Bai Jianmu was most worried about had happened. How should he answer? Thinking of this, Bai Jianmu subconsciously looked at Lu Huarong, whose back was facing him. only to see that Lu Huarong's body was trembling uncontrollably. Seeing this scene, Bai Jianmu's heart suddenly moved. Could it be that Zhang Meng also asked Lu Huarong the same question? If that was the case, wasn't this a very important question? If his answer was different from Lu Huarong's, then wouldn't his plan be ruined? Thinking of this, Bai Jianmu's forehead also oozed cold sweat. How should he answer? How did Lu Huarong answer just now? This question kept going back and forth in Bai Jianmu's mind. Bai Jianmu was very clear about the consequences if he answered wrongly. He had painstakingly set up such a trap. Now, he had to rely on such a sentence to determine the winner with Yi Xian. If his answer was correct, then he would win this dispute. If his answer was wrong, then no matter how well he did in the past, there would be no chance of victory. Thinking of this, Bai Jianmu became even more nervous. He couldn't help but think about which side Lu Huarong was on. How did Lu Huarong answer? At this moment, Bai Jianmu wasn't the only one who was nervous. Lu Huarong was even more nervous. This was because the question Zhang Meng asked him just now wasn't this question, but him. At that time, was he standing on the left or right behind Bai Jianmu? However, now that he was asking Bai Jianmu, it was the same. Was he standing on the left or right in front of Bai Jianmu? How should he answer this question? Thinking of this question, Lu Huarong was almost in despair. If Zhang Meng had asked Bai Jianmu the same question as he asked himself, then Bai Jianmu would have a 50% chance of guessing correctly. However, Zhang Meng didn't ask this question. Instead, he used a wrong question to test Bai Jianmu. If Bai Jianmu had followed Zhang Meng's words, then no matter whether Bai Jianmu answered that Lu Huarong was on the left or right, it would be wrong. This was because Lu Huarong's answer at that time was to stand behind Bai Jianmu on the left. However, this dispute had failed. Bai Jianmu wouldn't end well, and Lu Huarong wouldn't end well either. At this moment, Lu Huarong really regretted it. Why did he have to participate in this dispute? Why couldn't he just do what he wanted to do? Now, he was almost at a dead end. If he could do this all over again, Lu Huarong swore that he would never make such a choice again. He would definitely be an honest person and never participate in any disputes. However, this was just a thought in his heart because it had already happened. Since he had done it, he could only bear the consequences. At this moment, everyone in the hall was looking at Bai Jianmu. This was because when Zhang Meng asked Lu Huarong, everyone was listening at the side. At this moment, after hearing Zhang Meng's question, everyone's expression changed. They all looked at Bai Jianmu, wanting to hear how Bai Jianmu would answer. If Bai Jianmu didn't lie in the situation at that time, he should definitely know where Lu Huarong was standing. If Bai Jianmu didn't know, then it proved that he was lying. If it was proven that Bai Jianmu was lying, then this problem would be serious. Now, it wasn't like when everyone was discussing in the hall just now. At that time, everyone could accuse each other, but no one had any real evidence to prove their words. Therefore, everyone's accusation was just a passing remark. No one would take it seriously because no one had any real evidence. However, it was different now. The bronze box that contained the blueprint had appeared. Now, as long as they could prove who was lying, then they could naturally assume that he was the one who stole the blueprint. This was because the bronze box that contained the blueprint could only appear in the hands of the person who stole it. Chapter 235. Sun Xinjing stared fixedly at Bai Jianmu, wanting to hear his answer. At this point, he already understood Zhang Meng's intentions. If Bai Jianmu's answer was the same as Lu Huarong's, it meant that Bai Jianmu wasn't lying. This bronze box was Zhang Leji's. In other words, the blueprint was stolen by Zhang Leji. There was no doubt about this. Hence, the crux of everything was Bai Jianmu's answer. At this moment, the most nervous person was naturally Bai Jianmu. He felt that he had never been so nervous in his entire life. On one side was a happy future. On the other side was a bottomless abyss. Bai Jianmu was stuck between the two. Bai Jianmu really wanted a happy future. But between the two, he didn't know which answer was correct. After thinking for a long time, Bai Jianmu still couldn't think of an answer. This question was too crucial. Suddenly, his heart stirred. He quietly turned his head and looked at Tang Jianan, who was not far away. Although Lu Huarong couldn't give him a hint, Tang Jianan had been listening at the side when he asked Lu Huarong earlier. He should know what Lu Huarong's answer would be. Bai Jianmu felt that this question was very good. What he was facing now was to choose whether Lu Huarong would stand on the left or the right. If Tang Jianan wanted to give this hint, it was actually very simple. He only needed to blink his left or right eye, and this question would be answered. As long as he answered this question according to his hint, everything would really be over. When Bai Jianmu turned his head to look at Tang Jianan, he was shocked to discover that the cold sweat on Tang Jianan's forehead was even more than his own. Tang Jianan's face was pale. Large beads of cold sweat kept rolling down his forehead. If one looked carefully, they would be able to see that his body was trembling slightly. Upon seeing this scene, Bai Jianmu was a little surprised. But in such an urgent situation, he didn't think too much. He only felt that Tang Jianan was a coward who was afraid of trouble. Bai Jianmu didn't pay attention to other parts of Tang Jianan. He only stared at Tang Jianan's eyes, wanting to see his hint. At this moment, after hearing Zhang Meng's question, Tang Jianan only felt a chill in his heart. If Zhang Meng asked the same question as he asked Lu Huarong just now, Bai Jianmu's answer would only be half right and half wrong. However, when Zhang Meng asked this question, Tang Jianan felt that it was almost impossible for Bai Jianmu to discover the trap behind this question. If Bai Jianmu's answer was wrong, Tang Jianan naturally knew what the consequences would be. At that time, Bai Jianmu would be the one who stole the blueprints and wouldn't have a good ending. As for himself, what good ending would he have? During this period of time, as long as everyone wasn't blind, they would be able to tell that he had been speaking up for Bai Jianmu. Under such circumstances, as long as Bai Jianmu was unlucky, he definitely wouldn't be able to escape. Looking at Bai Jianmu's gaze, Tang Jianan wanted to shout at him that all of this was fake, but he didn't dare, because he was very clear that if Bai Jianmu failed in this matter, it would prove that he was the one who stole the blueprints. He would definitely not have a good ending. As for himself, although he wouldn't have a good ending, he wasn't the one who stole the blueprints, so there was still a lot of room to maneuver. Even if he was punished, it would definitely not be as severe as Bai Jianmu's. However, if he reminded Bai Jianmu loudly, then, needless to say, whether Bai Jianmu's plan failed or not, he would definitely be the first to be unlucky. Tang Jianan knew very well how important this blueprint was to his master and how important it was to the South County branch. If he dared to make a mistake here, he would definitely not have a good ending. However, if he didn't remind Bai Jianmu, then he would be the one who would be unlucky. The most important thing now was how should he remind Bai Jianmu? Tang Jianan would definitely not use this method to remind Bai Jianmu. Since he couldn't use words to remind him, he could only use his actions to do so. However, how could he use his actions to remind him of such a complicated matter? Moreover, he couldn't make any obvious actions to remind Bai Jianmu. If he did that, it would be no different from reminding him verbally. Tang Jianan was so anxious that cold sweat broke out on his forehead, but he still couldn't think of a way to remind Bai Jianmu. At this moment, he happened to see Bai Jianmu looking at him. Feeling Bai Jianmu's questioning gaze, Tang Jianan's heart suddenly moved. Since he couldn't make any obvious actions, he could only use his eyes to answer. However, how could he remind Bai Jianmu with just a pair of eyes? Zhang Meng asked Bai Jianmu. When he came out from under the bed, he saw Lu Huarong. Was he on the left or right opposite the bed? And the real answer was on the left behind Bai Jianmu. How could he use his eyes to remind him of such an answer? Although Tang Jianan thought that it was Bai Jianmu's method, he couldn't make such a look. What should he do? Seeing the questioning look in Bai Jianmu's eyes getting stronger and stronger, Tang Jianan was so anxious that he was sweating more and more, but he still couldn't think of a way. Helpless, Tang Jianan didn't blink. He just raised his eyebrows desperately. He wanted to tell Bai Jianmu that the real answer was that Lu Huarong was behind Bai Jianmu. Although Tang Jianan wanted to express what he wanted to convey, Bai Jianmu couldn't understand it. When he looked at Tang Jianan, he could tell that Tang Jianan understood what he meant. However, not long after, he realized that Tang Jianan kept raising his eyebrows at him. What did this mean? Tang Jianan raised his eyebrows. What did he mean? Was Lu Huarong on the left or on the right? Bai Jianmu didn't understand. He even thought that since both of Tang Jianan's eyebrows were raised at the same time, could it be that Lu Huarong was standing in the middle? Thinking of this possibility, Bai Jianmu thought about it carefully again and realized that this possibility was really very high. When he came out from under the bed, Lu Huarong was standing in the middle of the bed. Could it be that when Zhang Meng asked Lu Huarong's answer was like this? Although Bai Jianmu thought so in his heart, he didn't dare to confirm that the answer was really like this. Because this answer was too important, so important that he didn't dare to answer easily. After thinking carefully, Bai Jianmu felt that he was right. Looking at Tang Jianan, who was still raising his eyebrows at him, Bai Jianmu nodded slightly at him, indicating that he understood what he wanted to say. And Tang Jianan, seeing Bai Jianmu nod, he felt slightly relieved. He thought that Bai Jianmu had understood what he wanted to say. Since Bai Jianmu had already understood that he wanted to tell him that Lu Huarong was behind him, then the next thing was simple. Thinking of this, Tang Jianan winked at Bai Jianmu with his left eye again, indicating that Lu Huarong was behind him on the left. After that, Tang Jianan stared at Bai Jianmu. He wanted to see if he understood what he meant. Chapter 236. Seeing Tang Jianan hinting that Lu Huarong was in the middle of the opposite side of the bed, Bai Jianmu finally understood this point. But before he could relax, he suddenly discovered that Tang Jianan, who was opposite him, suddenly started to blink his left eye at him. Upon seeing Tang Jianan's gaze, Bai Jianmu was truly a little confused. Tang Jianan wanted to tell him that Lu Huarong was in the middle of the opposite side of the bed, and he already understood. However, he blinked his left eye again. What did this mean? Could it be that he wanted to express that Lu Huarong was standing in the middle at the start, but after a while, he went to the left? No. Bai Jianmu felt that this was impossible. Tang Jianan wouldn't express it like this. If Tang Jianan wanted to tell him that Lu Huarong was on the left side of the opposite side of the bed, he would definitely not raise his brows and then blink his left eye. At this moment, Bai Jianmu was truly a little confused. He didn't understand what Tang Jianan wanted to express. Bai Jianmu felt anxious. He wanted nothing more than to grab Tang Jianan and ask him for an explanation. What was he trying to tell him by making such a gaze? Tang Jianan looked at Bai Jianmu's puzzled gaze and became even more anxious. He kept raising his brows and blinking his left eye from time to time, wanting Bai Jianmu to understand that Lu Huarong was actually behind him on the left side. Tang Jianan's idea was good, but Bai Jianmu couldn't understand his actions. At this moment, Zhang Meng, who had been looking at everyone, suddenly spoke loudly. Lu Huarong, turn around and listen to Bai Jianmu's answer. When Zhang Meng said this, everyone present was shocked. Zhang Meng's question earlier allowed everyone to understand many things. At the crucial moment, Zhang Meng actually asked Lu Huarong to turn around. What did this mean? Everyone in the hall had the same question in their minds. Why did Zhang Meng do this? After hearing Zhang Meng's words, Sun Xinjing was even more dumbfounded. Zhang Meng had asked Bai Jianmu just now. He had also been observing the situation. At first, Bai Jianmu answered smoothly. However, when it came to the last question, Sun Xinjing could tell that Bai Jianmu was a little flustered. At this time, Sun Xinjing already had a trace of suspicion, because he knew that Bai Jianmu might be lying. If he wasn't lying, he should be able to easily answer where Lu Huarong was at that time. Could it be that his previous guess was wrong? Was the blueprint actually stolen by Bai Jianmu? As soon as this thought appeared in his mind, Sun Xinjing quickly dismissed it. He guessed that maybe Bai Jianmu didn't notice the situation at that time, so he carefully recalled where Lu Huarong was standing at that time. This was not impossible. If Bai Jianmu did not pay attention to this point at that time, he would need to carefully recall the situation at that time. However, after a while, Sun Xinjing felt that something was wrong. He noticed that when Bai Jianmu turned to look at Tang Jianan, the two of them kept exchanging glances. Tang Jianan was even more exaggerated. He kept raising his eyebrows and blinking. Bai Jianmu didn't understand what Tang Jianan wanted to express because he didn't know what Zhang Meng's question was. However, Sun Xinjing was different. He knew what Zhang Meng's question was. After seeing Tang Jianan's eyes, he naturally knew what Tang Jianan wanted to tell Bai Jianmu. Tang Jianan raised his eyebrows, meaning that Lu Huarong was behind Bai Jianmu. Tang Jianan blinked his left eye, meaning that he was behind Lu Huarong and to the left. Looking at Tang Jianan in front of him, he actually kept exchanging glances with Bai Jianmu, wanting to tell him the answer to this question. Sun Xinjing knew very well that the answer to this question was very important. Now that the bronze box where the blueprint was placed had appeared, next, they just had to find out who the bronze box belonged to. Then, they would naturally know who the person who stole the blueprint was. However, Tang Jianan actually dared to exchange glances with Bai Jianmu to tell him the answer to such an important question. What did this mean? It meant that Tang Jianan and Bai Jianmu were in cahoots. Perhaps the two of them had collaborated to steal the blueprint. Recalling how the two of them said that the blueprint was stolen by Yi Xian and Zhang Leji, Sun Xinjing's heart suddenly surged with anger. These two scums, not only did they steal the blueprint, but they also wanted to shift the blame of stealing the blueprint onto others. Thinking of shifting the blame onto others, Sun Xinjing's heart suddenly moved. If it wasn't for Zhang Meng asking on his behalf, perhaps Bai Jianmu and Tang Jianan's plan would really succeed. He thought that if Bai Jianmu and Tang Jianan's plan succeeded, he would severely punish Yi Xian and Zhang Leji. He might even pass the position of the branch leader to Bai Jianmu in the future. Thinking of this, Sun Xinjing felt as if a knife was being twisted in his heart. It was also at this moment that he suddenly heard Zhang Meng ask Lu Huarong to turn around and listen to Bai Jianmu's answer. After hearing Zhang Meng's words, Sun Xinjing was also shocked. Originally, Tang Jianan's reminder alone was enough to let Bai Jianmu know the real answer to the question. If Lu Huarong and Bai Jianmu were in cahoots, if the two of them reminded Bai Jianmu together, then the possibility of Bai Jianmu finding the answer would be even greater. Now, Sun Xinjing was already a little suspicious of Lu Huarong. Bai Jianmu said that the bronze box was found in Zhang Leji's room. In order to prove the truth of Bai Jianmu's words, Lu Huarong even testified for him. What did this mean? It meant that Lu Huarong was very likely in cahoots with him. If Lu Huarong also turned around and reminded Bai Jianmu, then Sun Xinjing was sure that with Bai Jianmu's intelligence and wisdom, he would soon know the real answer to this question. Thinking of this, Sun Xinjing was about to say something to stop him when he suddenly saw Zhang Meng waving his hand at him imperceptibly, indicating for him not to speak. Seeing Zhang Meng's gesture, although the doubts in Sun Xinjing's heart hadn't been dispelled, he already understood that Zhang Meng already knew this point. Since Zhang Meng had already considered this point, then he must have his own ideas. Sun Xinjing could only secretly sigh and turn his head to continue watching what was happening in the hall. In the hall, what happened was just as Sun Xinjing guessed. After hearing Zhang Meng's words, Lu Huarong was immediately overjoyed. He knew the answer to this question. If he didn't give Bai Jianmu a hint, he was sure that Bai Jianmu would never know the real answer to this question. Thinking of this, Lu Huarong, who had been waiting impatiently, immediately turned around and quickly looked at Bai Jianmu, wanting to give Bai Jianmu a hint. After hearing Zhang Meng's words, Bai Jianmu's heart was also shocked, but it was immediately followed by a burst of ecstasy. He didn't understand what Tang Jianan's eyes meant just now. Chapter 237. Just now, Bai Jianmu only saw Tang Jianan raising his eyebrows and blinking his eyes. He was simply confused. At this moment, when he heard Zhang Meng ask Lu Huarong to turn around, he was ecstatic. He quickly turned his head and looked at Lu Huarong, hoping that he could give him some hints. If the two of them gave Bai Jianmu a hint, then Bai Jianmu believed that he would definitely be able to figure out something. Sure enough, as soon as Lu Huarong turned around, he couldn't wait to give Bai Jianmu a look. When his back was facing Bai Jianmu, Lu Huarong wanted to give Bai Jianmu a hint. However, when he turned around and wanted to give Bai Jinmu a hint, he suddenly realized that he didn't know how to do it. Thinking of this, cold sweat suddenly flowed down Lu Huarong's forehead. Lu Huarong knew that if he didn't give Bai Jinmu a hint, then no matter how Bai Jinmu guessed, he would only guess that he was on the left or right of the opposite side of the bed. He would definitely not expect that when Zhang Ming asked him that question, he was behind him. Looking at Bai Jinmu in front of him, Lu Huarong was so anxious that he was fuming, but there was nothing he could do. This was like a game. He couldn't speak. He definitely couldn't speak. Lu Huarong knew that as long as he opened his mouth to speak, he would be eliminated. But how should he express his thoughts? Lu Huarong was extremely anxious. He subconsciously turned his head to look at Tang Jinan, wanting to see how Tang Jinan would give Bai Jinmu a hint. Lu Huarong turned his head and saw that Tang Jinan was also looking at him. His eyes were also filled with anxiety and anticipation. Seeing this scene, Lu Huarong was so anxious that he wanted to shout out loud and tell Bai Jinmu that he was actually behind him on the left. Although Lu Huarong was shouting in his heart, he also knew that he definitely couldn't do that. If he shouted out loud, it would mean that this matter was a scam that he and Bai Jinmu had conspired together. But how should he express his thoughts? It was almost impossible to express such a complex meaning with only facial expressions. Originally, when he heard Zhang Ming ask Lu Huarong to turn around, Tang Jinan was relieved. He thought that Lu Huarong would give Bai Jinmu a hint. However, he never expected that he would only see anxiety in Lu Huarong's eyes, but he didn't see Lu Huarong do anything. Seeing this scene, Tang Jinan secretly sighed in his heart. He knew that Lu Huarong also did not know how to remind him. In fact, it made sense when he thought about it. It was really difficult to express such a complicated thing accurately just by facial expressions. The three of them knew that Bai Jinmu could only answer once, and this answer would determine whether their plan would succeed or not. If he succeeded, everything would be fine. Everything would be settled. If they failed, they would be completely finished and would never be able to make a comeback. Thinking of this, Tang Jinan knew that Lu Huarong alone might not be able to give Bai Jinmu a hint. Helplessly, Tang Jinan could only turn his head to look at Bai Jinmu again, raising his eyebrows and blinking his eyes. Lu Huarong, who was originally anxious, suddenly saw the expression on Tang Jinan's face when he was at his wit's end. He was immediately overjoyed. He knew how he answered just now, and he also knew what the real answer was. When he saw the content of Tang Jinan's expression, he naturally understood at a glance what Tang Jinan wanted to say. Therefore, Lu Huarong felt that Tang Jinan's expression was very accurate. Raising his eyebrows meant that behind him, and blinking his left eye meant that behind him was the left side of his body. Seeing this, Lu Huarong also looked at Bai Jinmu and began to raise his eyebrows and blink his eyes. Bai Jinmu, who was originally full of anticipation, really had a headache now. Originally, only Tang Jinan raised his eyebrows and blinked at him. Now, it became two people raising their eyebrows and blinking at him together. What were they trying to say? What did raising eyebrows and blinking mean? Bai Jinmu fell into deep thought again. He thought hard, and his mind was spinning rapidly, trying to think of an answer to this question. Bai Jinmu was indeed a talented and intelligent person. At the beginning, he thought that Tang Jinan had expressed it wrongly, so he was confused. But now it was different. The two of them raised their eyebrows and blinked at him together, making him certain that Tang Jinan wasn't randomly expressing it. He had a certain purpose and wanted to tell him the real answer. Thinking of this, Bai Jinmu sorted out his thoughts and began to think carefully about the question Zhang Ming asked just now. When he came out from under the bed, was Lu Huarong on the left or right side of the opposite bed? Thinking of Zhang Ming's question, Bai Jinmu thought carefully and began to ponder the meaning of Tang Jinan's gaze. Very soon, he figured out one thing. According to Zhang Ming's question, was Lu Huarong on the left or right side of the bed? Then, if Tang Jinan wanted to tell him whether Lu Huarong was on the left or right side of the bed, he only needed to blink his left eye or right eye, and he would be able to express his meaning very clearly. However, Tang Jinan didn't do that. He raised his eyebrows and then blinked his left eye. This meant that Lu Huarong was on the left side. However, Tang Jianan and Lu Huarong raised their eyebrows. What did this mean? Thinking of this, Bai Jianmu's thoughts fell into a state of contemplation again. Could it be that Lu Huarong was on the left, but he wasn't standing on the opposite side? If he was standing on the left side of the opposite side of the bed, Tang Jianan and Lu Huarong wouldn't need to raise their eyebrows. After understanding this point, Bai Jianmu's spirit suddenly shook. He felt that he had figured out a little bit of an idea. If he continued to think according to this idea, he should be able to find a real answer to the question. Then, what was the real answer to this question? If Tang Jianan raised his eyebrows and blinked to express that Lu Huarong was on the left side, then Lu Huarong wasn't standing on the opposite side of the bed. Then, where should Lu Huarong be standing? Raising his eyebrows, could it be that Lu Huarong was on the top? No. Why would Lu Huarong be on the top? Lu Huarong couldn't fly, so he could only be on the ground. Since Lu Huarong was on the ground, then what did they mean by raising their eyebrows? Thinking of this, Bai Jianmu looked at the two of them carefully. This time, he was mainly looking at how Tang Jianan and Lu Huarong raised their eyebrows. After looking for a long time, Bai Jianmu finally understood something. Tang Jianan and Lu Huarong were working very hard when they did this action. They raised their eyebrows until they couldn't move anymore. What did this mean? They raised their eyebrows to the top. From the looks of it, if they could open their eyes wider, they would raise their eyebrows even higher. They raised their eyebrows so high. What were they trying to express? What was the meaning of this? Chapter 238. Sun Xinjing, who had been sitting at the head of the table, was so angry that his lungs almost exploded. Originally, only Tang Jianan was there, raising his eyebrows and blinking his eyes. However, after Lu Huarong turned around, it became two people raising their eyebrows and blinking their eyes. These two guys didn't give him any face at all. They actually dared to lie in front of him. By now, Sun Xinjing was sure that Bai Jianmu was lying. Bai Jianmu didn't know the answer to this question. In other words, they didn't go through this part in Zhang Liji's bedroom just now. This meant that Bai Jianmu didn't go under the bed to take the bronze box. Therefore, when he came out from under the bed, he didn't see Lu Huarong. The only explanation was that the two of them had been discussing countermeasures. They did not go anywhere and did not look anywhere. Perhaps the two of them only looked under the bed to see what was under it. Other than that, the two of them probably did nothing else. Since they didn't do anything, how would they know? So much time had passed, but Bai Jianmu still hadn't answered Zhang Meng's question. Although Sun Xinjing was waiting anxiously, Zhang Meng didn't say anything. He could only endure it. After all, he had already asked Zhang Meng to take care of this matter. If he asked again, it would be somewhat inappropriate. Therefore, before Zhang Meng said anything, Sun Xinjing could only wait. Looking at the three of them who were constantly winking at each other, Sun Xinjing's heart was filled with a wave of regret. When he found out that the blueprint was lost, he immediately gathered all his disciples to discuss this matter. At that time, everyone insisted that Yi Xian was the only one who knew the location of the drawing, and that Yi Xian was the only one who could possibly steal the drawing. At that time, he was so angry that he didn't think much and locked Yi Xian in the Repentance Pavilion. However, now that he thought about it carefully, there were really too many suspicious points. Although Bai Jianmu was not the first one to identify Yi Xian as the culprit, every word he said hinted at this matter. For example, whenever Bai Jianmu wanted to say something, he would first ask someone else. None of us know where the blueprints are, so even if we want to steal them, we can't find them. When Bai Jianmu asked this question, the first reaction of the person who was talking to him was, "Who knows where the blueprint is?" There was only one answer. The blueprint could only be placed in Yi Xian. That day, Bai Jianmu said a lot of things like this. He never directly accused Yi Xian of being the person who stole the design, but he gave everyone a hint and made them think that Yi Xian was the one who stole the design. Now that he thought about it, Sun Xinjing came to a realization. Then, he felt like he had been cheated. To be honest, among all his brothers, the people Sun Xinjing trusted and valued the most were Yi Xian and Bai Jianmu. Both of them were very talented, and both of them were very hard-working in their cultivation. However, Sun Xinjing didn't like the fact that Bai Jianmu represented the Bai family in South County. Other than that, Bai Jianmu didn't have any shortcomings. However, it was only now that Sun Xinjing realized that he was wrong. Extremely wrong. Back then, his judgment was too bad. He actually misjudged so many people. He suspected that Yi Xian was the one who stole the blueprint. Sun Xian was wrong about this. Under the testimony of all his disciples, he really thought that Yi Xian was the one who stole the blueprint. That was why he didn't hesitate to lock Yi Xian in the Repentance Pavilion. Sun Xinjing was also wrong about Bai Jianmu. He thought that Bai Jianmu wouldn't do that. Or rather, he never thought that Bai Jianmu would do that. This proved that he was wrong about Bai Jianmu. He didn't seem to have made a big mistake. Sun Xinjing was also wrong about Tang Jianan. This seemingly honest second disciple was still raising his eyebrows and blinking at Bai Jianmu. Tang Jianan usually didn't have any bad behavior. Sun Xinjing had always thought that the description of him as honest was very appropriate. In Sun Xinjing's opinion, Tang Jianan was a good person. He usually didn't offend others or speak ill of others. If his junior brothers had any problems looking for him, he would help them without hesitation. He didn't know if such a person had hidden himself too well or if he had suddenly become bad. And that Lu Huarong didn't seem to be a good person either. Sun Xinjing knew that this sixth disciple, Lu Huarong, was usually silent and timid. But such a person actually joined forces with Bai Jianmu to do such a thing. The way he was raising his eyebrows and blinking his eyes now was completely different from his usual silent and timid self. It was as if he was a different person. If it wasn't for the fact that his appearance and tone were exactly the same, Sun Xinjing would have suspected that this wasn't his sixth disciple, Lu Huarong, but someone else in disguise. There was also Zhang Liji. Just now, Zhang Liji shouted that he was innocent, but he didn't listen to him. Thinking of this, Sun Xinjing secretly rejoiced. If Zhang Meng hadn't appeared, he was afraid that he would have locked Zhang Liji up in the Repentance Pavilion. At the thought of this outcome, Sun Xinjing couldn't help but shudder in his heart. If this was the outcome of the matter, it would be simply terrifying. Yi Xian and Zhang Liji, who didn't steal the blueprints, had become the ones who stole the blueprints. They would be severely punished by him. In the end, they would definitely be expelled from the sect. Even Sun Xinjing himself didn't doubt this. The most terrifying thing was that Bai Jianmu, Tang Jianan, and Lu Huarong, who had stolen the blueprints, were safe and sound. In the end, he would even pass the position of the South County branch leader to Bai Jianmu. Thinking of this, Sun Xinjing sighed. If Yi Xian and Zhang Liji were expelled from the sect, it was almost certain that Bai Jianmu would be the next branch leader. This was because other than Yi Xian and Zhang Liji, only Bai Jianmu was left. He could take on a big responsibility. Thinking of Bai Jianmu, who stole the blueprints, becoming the branch leader of the South County branch leader, Sun Xinjing felt a chill run down his spine. For such a scheming person to become the branch leader of the South County branch leader, it was definitely not a good thing for the South County branch leader. Moreover, Bai Jianmu was a member of the Bai family in the South County. If Bai Jianmu became the branch leader of the South County branch leader, then the South County branch leader would almost become the Bai family's South County branch leader. Thinking of this, Sun Xinjing turned to look at Zhang Meng. He was really glad. If it wasn't for Zhang Meng's suggestion, he would probably have been kept in the dark. He might even have made a wrong judgment that would make him regret it for the rest of his life. Sun Xinjing turned his gaze to Bai Jianmu and the other two. Suddenly, a wave of hatred surged in his heart. He had painstakingly taught them for so many years, but what did he get in return? It was the betrayal of the three of them. The three of them had worked together to steal his blueprints and then framed Yi Xian. This kind of behavior simply made Sun Xinjing hate them to the core. Sun Xinjing was an honest and considerate person. What he disliked the most was naturally this kind of cunning person. Chapter 239. Bai Jianmu was indeed very smart. After thinking for a while, he actually vaguely understood what the two of them were trying to express. They tried their best to raise their eyebrows. When they were at the very top, they still wanted to raise their eyebrows. What did this mean? It meant that they wanted to raise their eyebrows further. If they could continue to raise their eyebrows, the final result would naturally be to move them to the back of their heads. The back of their heads. Thinking of this, Bai Jianmu's heart suddenly moved. Could it be that what they wanted to express was the back of their heads? Thinking of this, Bai Jianmu was secretly happy. He already somewhat understood what the two of them wanted to express. Could it be that what Zhang Ming asked them was different from what he asked him? When he asked the two of them, Zhang Ming asked where was the back of their heads. When Zhang Ming asked him, he asked where was the opposite side of the bed. Thinking of this, Bai Jianmu was secretly shocked. If he didn't understand this point, wouldn't he be falling into Zhang Ming's plan? However, although Bai Jianmu felt that he guessed correctly and understood what the two of them wanted to express, he still didn't dare to be sure. This was because Bai Jianmu also knew that this question could only be answered once. If he answered wrongly, he would immediately fall into a state of eternal damnation. Although he understood this point, Bai Jianmu still didn't dare to be sure. He decided to try and see if he guessed correctly. Thinking of this, Bai Jianmu put his hand behind his head and pretended to scratch it. At the same time, his gaze was fixed on Lu Huarong. He wanted to see if Lu Huarong understood what he meant. Lu Huarong, who was anxiously raising his eyebrows and blinking his eyes, suddenly saw Bai Jianmu staring at him. At the same time, he reached out and scratched the back of his head. However, Bai Jianmu scratched his head for a longer time. At the same time, he was still staring at him. Seeing this, Lu Huarong was stunned for a moment. After a while, he was suddenly overjoyed. He knew that Bai Jianmu understood what he and Tang Jianan wanted to express. Bai Jianmu scratched the back of his head. He just wanted to ask himself if he guessed correctly. After understanding this point, Lu Huarong hurriedly nodded at Bai Jianmu. At the same time, he stopped raising his eyebrows and began to blink his left eye. Seeing this, Bai Jianmu knew that he had guessed correctly. The real answer to the question was the same as he had thought. Thinking of this, Bai Jianmu secretly hated Zhang Ming for being so cunning. He actually used this kind of question to test him. The key point was that the question he asked him and Lu Huarong was not the same question. Thanks to his own cleverness, Tang Jianan, and Lu Huarong's help, he was able to guess the answer. Now that he had figured out the correct answer, Bai Jianmu immediately relaxed. He turned to look at Zhang Ming, sneered, and said loudly, "Prince Zhang, do you want me to answer? Is junior brother Lu on the left or right of the opposite side of the bed?" At this point, Bai Jianmu paused for a moment before he sneered again and continued. "However, my answer may disappoint Prince Zhang." Speaking of this, Bai Jianmu turned to look at Sun Xinjing, cupped his fists, and said, "Master, my answer is that junior brother Lu was standing on the left behind me." After saying this, Bai Jianmu looked at Zhang Ming proudly and sneered. "Prince Zhang, my answer must disappoint you." Ha! At the end of his words, Bai Jianmu had already laughed wildly. After laughing, Bai Jianmu looked around and suddenly froze. Everyone was looking at him with puzzled eyes. Seeing this scene, Bai Jianmu was suddenly shocked. He turned his head to look at his master, only to see that Sun Xinjing was also looking at him with unkind eyes. At this moment, Bai Jianmu felt that something was wrong. He cupped his fists and said, "Master, am I wrong?" Sun Xinjing waved his hand weakly and said indifferently, "Your answer is correct. Lu Huarong was indeed standing on the left behind you." After hearing Sun Xinjing's words, Bai Jianmu was slightly relieved. He knew that there was no time to lose and that he had to strike while the iron was hot. So he quickly continued, "Master, since my answer is correct, it means that I didn't lie. The person who lied is Zhang Leji. From this, it can be concluded that the blueprint must have been stolen by Zhang Leji in Yixian." After saying this, Bai Jianmu turned to look at Zhang Leji and was stunned. At this moment, Zhang Leji was also looking at him with burning eyes. Bai Jianmu didn't understand what had happened, but he didn't care. As long as Zhang Leji and Yixian were defeated, He would be the boss of the South County branch in the future. Zhang Leji, I have a witness who can prove that what I said is true. What about you? Do you have a witness who can prove that what you said is true? At this point, Bai Jimu paused for a moment. Then, without waiting for Zhang Leji to answer, he continued to speak. Zhang Leji, now that the evidence is conclusive, I think it's better for you to admit it so that I don't have to use some small tricks and suffer some unnecessary pain. In Bai Jianmu's mind, after he finished speaking, Zhang Leji would only have two reactions. One was to curse and torture himself, but so what? As long as he could frame him as the person who stole the blueprint, Bai Jianmu could still endure a few curses. The other was that Zhang Leji knew that he was powerless to defend himself and could only admit to his crime. In Bai Jianmu's opinion, the second possibility was not big. On the contrary, the first possibility was very likely to happen. However, even if the first possibility happened, Bai Jianmu was not afraid. He had already thought of a countermeasure. As long as Zhang Leji dared to curse at him or even rush over to fight with him, he would not mind using some small tricks on him in advance and directly cripple him. Anyway, the evidence was conclusive now. Even if he crippled Zhang Leji, no one would say anything. Instead, they would say that he abhorred evil. Unfortunately, Bai Jianmu's guess did not happen. Zhang Leji did not curse at him, nor did he admit to his crime. He just looked at Bai Jianmu silently. Seeing this scene, Bai Jianmu's bad feelings surged in his heart again, giving him a bad feeling. Could it be that things have changed? But what changes could there be? During this period, no one spoke. Bai Jianmu was sure of this. Since no one spoke, what was going on? Thinking of this, Bai Jianmu turned his head again to look at Sun Xinjing, but he saw that Sun Xinjing did not listen to him. Instead, he closed his eyes and pondered, as if he did not care about anything. Seeing this, Bai Jianmu was puzzled. He turned his head to look at Zhang Meng and asked loudly, Prince Zhang, since it has been proven that I did not lie, can we confirm that Zhang Leji is the person who stole the blueprint? Chapter 240. Bai Jianmu said, Prince Zhang, since it is proven that the bronze box was found in Zhang Leji's room, can it prove that Zhang Leji and Yi Xian were the ones who stole the blueprint? Hearing Bai Jianmu's question, Zhang Meng did not answer. He only smiled. Then, he turned to look at Lu Huarong and asked, Lu Huarong, what do you mean? Lu Huarong was shocked when he heard Zhang Meng's question. However, he knew that this was a serious matter and did not dare to neglect it. So he quickly answered, Prince Zhang, senior brother Bai is right. Since the bronze box was found in third senior brother's room, it is enough to prove that the blueprint was stolen by third senior brother and Yi Xian. After hearing Lu Huarong's answer, Zhang Meng still did not answer. Instead, he turned to look at Tang Jianan and asked, Tang Jianan, what do you think? Tang Jianan quickly replied, Prince Zhang, although I don't understand what happened, since the bronze box was found in third junior brother's room, then this matter should be done by third junior brother and Yi Xian together. There should be no mistake about this. After hearing Tang Jianan's answer, Zhang Meng still did not say anything. Instead, he turned his head again and looked at LV Wenkong. He asked, LV Wenkong, you saw what happened just now. What do you think? After hearing Zhang Meng's question, LV Wenkong was stunned. For a moment, he did not say anything. Just now, when Zhang Meng asked Lu Huarong and Bai Jianmu questions, he had been watching from the side. This matter was of great importance. Therefore, from the beginning, when Zhang Meng asked Lu Huarong to Bai Jianmu, LV Wenkong saw the whole process clearly. Originally, he always thought that Bai Jianmu was right. In the South County branch, the only person who knew the location of his master's blueprint was Yi Xian. Therefore, he always thought that the person who stole the blueprint could only be Yi Xian, who knew the location of the blueprint. Although he did not believe that Yi Xian would do such a thing, the only person who knew the location of the blueprint was Yi Xian. This was absolutely true. Therefore, he could only believe that Yi Xian was the person who stole the blueprint like everyone else. However, after Zhang Meng's inquiry just now, he could see something. When Zhang Meng asked Lu Huarong, everything was normal. However, He was shocked when he asked Bai Jianmu's question by Jianmu. Bai Jianmu and Tang Jianan exchanged glances back and forth. Bai Jianmu thought that he was very discreet, but they had been exchanging glances for a long time. As long as one wasn't blind, one should be able to tell. After seeing Bai Jianmu, LV Wenkong did not think much of it at first, but as time passed, he realized that something was wrong. He had been standing in the hall the whole time. He naturally heard Zhang Meng's question to Lu Huarong clearly. Bai Jianmu did not know the answer to Tang Jianan's expression, so it took him a long time to understand what Tang Jianan was trying to say. However, LV Wenkong was different. He knew the correct answer to this question. Therefore, when he saw Tang Jianan raising his eyebrows and blinking his eyes, he understood what Tang Jianan was doing in just a moment. Tang Jianan was sending a message to Bai Jianmu, telling him the answer. After understanding this, LV Wenkong was a little uneasy, and a trace of doubt appeared in his heart. If Bai Jianmu knew the answer to this question, he should be able to answer it very quickly. However, why did he need Tang Jianan to give him a hint? If what Bai Jianmu said was true, and this bronze box was found in Zhang Meng's room, then Bai Jianmu should have experienced the question that Zhang Meng asked him. No matter who it was, if they found such an important item under the bed, they would definitely be happy to share it with others. Therefore, after he came out from under the bed, he would definitely look for Lu Huarong and tell him the news. It could be said that as long as they experienced it, they would never forget it. Even if they temporarily forgot it, they would immediately remember it after thinking about it for a while. However, why didn't Bai Jianmu think about it? Why didn't Bai Jianmu recall what happened at that time? Why did he ask Tang Jianan to give him a hint? If it really happened, Bai Jianmu should be able to recall it himself without Tang Jianan's reminder. Thinking of this, LV Wenkong was more confused. All of a sudden, he seemed to understand something. Could it be that what Bai Jianmu said was a lie? Wasn't that bronze box found in Zhang Leji's room? Thinking of this possibility, LV Wenkong thought about it carefully again. After a long while, he was shocked to find that if it was true, it made sense that Bai Jianmu and Tang Jianan kept winking at each other. Bai Jianmu and Lu Huarong's room was different from what they said. Naturally, the bronze box wasn't found in Zhang Leji's room. Bai Jianmu took it out directly. Since it was taken out directly, they naturally couldn't experience the question that Zhang Meng asked. Therefore, it was very difficult to answer this question. Thinking of this, LV Wenkong looked more carefully. He suddenly thought of another question. If Bai Jianmu was lying, then the bronze box that contained the blueprint actually belonged to him. He was framing Zhang Leji. What was the key to this question? If Bai Jianmu was suspicious, then what was going on with Tang Jianan, who kept winking at him? Could it be that Tang Jianan was also Bai Jianmu's accomplice? Only if they were accomplices would Tang Jianan do such a thing and give Bai Jianmu a hint. Thinking that Tang Jianan was also Bai Jianmu's accomplice, LV Wenkong's heart couldn't help but tremble. He thought of all the things that happened in the past, which made him more clear in his heart. He also understood that all of this was done by Bai Jianmu and Tang Jianan. Yi Xian, who was locked in a repentance pavilion, and the current biggest suspect, Zhang Leji, should be wronged. Just when LV Wenkong was suspicious, he heard Zhang Meng actually ask Lu Huarong to turn around and let him listen to Bai Jianmu's words. Hearing the name Lu Huarong, LV Wenkong's heart moved again. If Tang Jianan, who kept winking at Bai Jianmu, was Bai Jianmu's accomplice, then what was going on with Lu Huarong, who gave false evidence for Bai Jianmu? The answer to this question quickly came to a conclusion. LV Wenkong saw that not long after Lu Huarong turned around, he began to raise his eyebrows and wink at Bai Jianmu, like Tang Jianan did. Seeing this scene, LV Wenkong suddenly understood why Lu Huarong testified for Bai Jianmu. The reason for all of this was because Lu Huarong was also Bai Jianmu's accomplice. This meant that Bai Jianmu, Tang Jianan, and Lu Huarong were definitely in the same group. Chapter 241. Hearing Zhang Meng's question, LV Wenkong snapped out of his deep thoughts. He looked at Tang Jianan and the other two in front of him and thought about Zhang Meng's question. After a long while, he sighed and said slowly, I think there's something fishy going on. I think there's something fishy about this matter. Third junior brother should have been wronged. LV Wenkong's words immediately caused Bai Jianmu and the others to be greatly shocked. From the beginning, under Bai Jianmu's guidance, although LV Wenkong didn't directly say that Yi Xian was the person who stole the blueprint, he was more or less inclined to believe that Yi Xian was the one who stole the blueprint. But now, he directly said that Zhang Leji was wronged. This was a big problem. In this situation, Bai Jianmu said that the bronze box was found in Zhang Leji's room, and Zhang Leji said that Bai Jianmu had wronged him. Under such circumstances, saying that Zhang Leji was wronged was equivalent to saying that the bronze box belonged to Bai Jianmu. Although LV Wenkong didn't directly say this sentence, everyone present already understood. Bai Jianmu was only stunned for a moment before he immediately reacted. He hurriedly turned to look at LV Wenkong and asked loudly, Senior brother, you're wrong. The bronze box was found in Zhang Leji's room. If I'm lying, then I have Lu Huarong to testify for me. How can you say that I wronged him? Eldest senior brother, you have to think clearly before you speak. Don't wrongly accuse a good person. At this moment, Tang Jianan was also a little anxious. He hurriedly said loudly, Eldest senior brother, don't be deceived by Zhang Leji. Did you forget that Zhang Leji asked me to accuse you of stealing the blueprint? I tried my best to defend you. Eldest senior brother, if I didn't defend you, I'm afraid that you would have been wrongly accused by Zhang Leji of stealing the blueprint. Eldest senior brother, do you still think that Zhang Yanel was wrongly accused? Hearing LV Wenkong's words, not only Bai Jianmu and Tang Jianan were anxious, but Lu Huarong's forehead was suddenly covered in cold sweat. If eldest senior brother LV Wenkong also said that Zhang Leji was wronged, the consequences would be dire. Originally, no one was defending Yi Xian. The three of them could speak freely and slander Yi Xian and Zhang Leji. However, with eldest senior brother LV Wenkong defending Zhang Leji, their words would be questioned by their master. Thinking of this, Lu Huarong didn't wait for LV Wenkong to answer Tang Jian and Bai Jianmu. Eldest senior brother, the bronze box containing the blueprint was indeed found by senior brother Bai in third senior brother's room. I can definitely testify to this. Moreover, senior brother Bai had answered Prince Zhang's question correctly. Didn't that prove that senior brother Bai wasn't lying? Or could it be that eldest senior brother suspects both me and senior brother Bai? Hearing the questions of Bai Jianmu and the other two, LV Wenkong sighed in his heart. He was now completely certain that these three junior brothers were definitely in cahoots. Otherwise, they wouldn't have reacted like this. Thinking that this blueprint had actually caused his fellow brothers to turn against him, LV Wenkong felt a wave of sadness in his heart. He glanced at Bai Jianmu and the other two, sighed, and said slowly, It's better for you guys not to quibble about this matter. As long as you take out the blueprint, I will definitely plead with Master not to freeze you guys. Quickly wake up and don't make any more mistakes. Hearing LV Wenkong's words, Bai Jianmu had a bad feeling. He knew that things were bad this time. However, at this point, he knew very well that even if he admitted defeat and took out the blueprint, he would probably no longer have a foothold in the South County branch. Thinking of this, Bai Jianmu gritted his teeth and suddenly laughed out loud. Eldest senior brother, I really didn't expect that now that the evidence is conclusive and you have this bronze box, you still want to defend Zhang Leji. Could it be that you actually stole the blueprint, eldest senior brother? After hearing Bai Jianmu's words, LV Wenkong's heart instantly turned cold. He also knew very well that now, whoever had anything to do with this bronze box would be unlucky. What he didn't expect was that an outsider like him would be accused of stealing the blueprint by Bai Jianmu. Thinking of this, even LV Wenkong, who had always had a good temper, couldn't hold it in anymore. He suddenly turned his head to look at Bai Jianmu and shouted with his eyes wide open, Bai Jianmu, don't talk nonsense. You pretended to find a bronze box in Zhang Leji's room, and then used this bronze box to frame Zhang Leji. Do you think we don't know what you've done? Hee. Hearing LV Wenkong's words, Bai Jianmu didn't panic. He only laughed coldly and continued. Eldest senior brother, I don't know who's the one who's lying. Just now, we've already told Master that you can give up on all worldly matters in order to cultivate the art of mechanics. You can even not marry or have children. Naturally, your goal is to cultivate the art of mechanics. Eldest senior brother, you can say that the most important thing to you in this life is the art of mechanics. And this blueprint is exactly what you need. All of us are very clear that you have reached a bottleneck in your training in mechanical techniques. If you want to raise your attainment in mechanical techniques, you have to find another path. And this blueprint is something that can help you break through your bottleneck. Eldest senior brother, I don't believe that you can resist the temptation of such a huge benefit. Hearing Bai Jianmu's words, LV Wunkong's old face flushed red. He hurriedly defended himself. Bai Jianmu, you're talking about other people's private matters again. Whether I marry or not, whether I have children or not, what has that got to do with you? Although I like to cultivate the art of mechanics, I will definitely not steal Master's blueprint. I can swear to the heavens on this. Hearing that LV Wunkong wanted to swear to the heavens, Bai Jianmu sneered in his heart. He knew that no matter who it was, when it came to swearing to the heavens, they would only swear to the heavens when they had no other choice. Now, LV Wunkong seemed to be swearing to the heavens. This proved that he could only rely on swearing to the heavens to defend himself against Bai Jianmu's accusation. Other than that, there was no other way. This was because everything Bai Jianmu said was true. Bai Jianmu was not the only one who knew about this matter. Everyone in the South County branch knew about it. Even Sun Xinjing knew very well what kind of person his eldest disciple was. LV Wunkong had indeed never married or had children. His only hobby was to cultivate the art of mechanics. If such a person said that the blueprint was not attractive to him, it would definitely be a lie. LV Wunkong himself knew this very well. That was why he could not refute Bai Jianmu's words. He could only rely on swearing to the heavens to defend himself. Other than this method, LV Wunkong really could not think of any other way to defend himself. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.